The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live and to Ask Dr. Doreen. I'm Shannon Penrod and I'm here with the fabulous, the wonderful Dr. Doreen Grampichet. She's going to be with us live for the next hour talking about autism from a 360-degree perspective. She's going to be answering your questions starting right now. I want to let you all know that we are live on several platforms right now. We're live on YouTube, on Twitter, and on Facebook, as well as our homepage, which is autism-live.com. You can visit any of those places and leave your comment. On our homepage, autism-live.com, it's a chat box. It's not an interactive chat box, so I have to warn you about that. But you can write in at the bottom where it says chat. We love it when you guys write in, be as specific as possible with your question, especially letting us know the age and the level of the individual and the largest city that you're close to so that Dr. Grampichet can reference services that might be available to you in your corner of the world. We do like to mention that, Dr. Grampichet is the most fabulous expert on the planet, I believe. I always say the preeminent expert in the field of autism, but really, I think
she's even more.
I like it better too. And she's been working in this field for, I know, hold on to your tray tables, for more than 40 years, which that doesn't seem possible because she would have to be doing it in the womb. But it is possible. She has really good skincare, which we're gonna make her share with us what that is. I think most of it is genes. I've seen your mother.
I actually started using that magical powder you mentioned to me, Shannon.
Oh, there we go. We'll have to give away secrets at some point. But I want to know what the moisturizer is that you use, because you don't look old enough to have, I think you probably get carded sometimes still.
Not more, sadly.
Well, when did that stop? Like last week? Let's be honest here. But in any case, she has been working in this field for 4 decades, y'all. And in that time, she's worked with so many different individuals, going from really young children, babies, up through senior citizens. There's so many things that I love about her, but the thing that I always point to directly, because I think it's what makes all of our hearts sing, is that she sees individuals as individuals. And that includes everyone in the family unit, the person who's on the spectrum and the people that are the people who love them in that family unit and is concerned for everyone's well-being, but sees them as individuals. And I particularly, the more time I spend in this community and the more people I meet, the more I treasure that, Dr. Grampichet, because I think it's rare and unique, and I really, really appreciate it. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the mom of an amazing young man who was diagnosed with autism at a very early age. And thanks to CARD, which is the company that Dr. Doreen founded, my son received the very best of ABA, the toppest quality of ABA. And we were just talking before we went on, is about to turn 18 and graduate in just a couple of weeks. Stop, get out, I can't even handle it. And off to college. And I have to be honest with you that is largely due to, and not largely, it's almost entirely due to Dr. Grampichet and her life's work. So if I love her extra, I want you to know why. So she's here and she's going to be answering your questions. And people have already started writing in. We're saying good morning to Nazra and Lucy and Jyota and Amanda and Mithra and Parker and Love Peace and Renee. Look at all of you piling in. I love it. I do want you to know that the show also podcasts. We're a free download wherever you get your podcasts. We're so grateful to all of you that we are now considered the #1 rated autism podcast because of all of you. So check us out wherever you get your podcasts, and you can watch all of the Ask Dr. Doreen's from the past and look them up by question. It's a really fabulous thing. Go to the tab at the top of our, there's many different places on the page where you can find the Ask Dr. Doreen's, but at the top there is a tab that says search by topic, and you can go onto a page and you can put in, toilet training is the example that I always give, and it'll take you to all of the different questions. You'll get to read the questions that she's been asked on toilet training, and you click directly on the question, it'll take you right to that place in the show. I happen to love that. We're a little behind currently, so all of the questions aren't there, but we're catching up. So Dr. Granpeesheh, welcome.
Thank you so much, Shannon. It's always lovely to be here, and I love seeing all the questions already piling in. So thank you so much for that lovely introduction, and I look forward to answering some questions with you today.
And you're looking lovely in your spring yellow. That's such a good color for you. Okay, so I'm going to go to a couple of questions that came in overnight first, and then we're going to go to some live ones. I have a question. How do you guys at CARD stop a child from stimming?
Oh, well, that's a great question to start with.
Kind of loaded, right?
Pardon?
It's kind of loaded.
Yeah, it's loaded. It's a great question. So the first thing you have to do is, like any other behavior that you want to identify, you want to change, you first have to kind of identify why that behavior is happening. What is the function of the behavior? Now, a lot of, from a purely behavioral standpoint, it's easy to say that all stimming or stereotypic repetitive behaviors their function is what we call automatic. That means that the behavior itself is reinforcing, intrinsically reinforcing. So it's an automatic function. But I believe that not all behaviors that are self-stimulatory, or what we classify as stimming, are automatic. I feel like there are other functions, other reasons these behaviors occur. Sometimes it is avoidance of pain, in my opinion. Sometimes these are behaviors that reduce anxiety. So they have other functions. Now, from a behavioral perspective, once you know the function of a behavior, then there are very specific procedures that you go through to help reduce those particular things. And those procedures are different if the function is automatic, or if it's avoidance of pain, or if it's avoidance or reduction of anxiety. Depending on what the function of the behavior is, you'll have a different procedure to follow. And unless we want this entire show, Shannon, to talk only about, behavior analysis, I guess I'll have to cut it there, because, there are so many different protocols and procedures that we use based on these different functions. I mean, that's all of ABA, right? If something is automatically reinforcing, you try to replace it with other things that are as powerfully reinforcing. If something is intended to avoid, let's say, pain, then it's very important to treat the underlying pain. If something is intended to reduce anxiety, then you have to ask yourself, why is the child experiencing anxiety, and can I help the child overcome their anxiety in other ways? So there's all these different things that we do depending on why the behavior is happening. And even if it is automatically reinforced, then there's, even within that set of functions, there's a whole bunch of different procedures. So I guess that's as far as I can take that answer.
But I love that answer, Dr. Granpeesheh, because, and the reason why I said it's kind of loaded, this question, is that the assumption here is that you would always want to stop a child from stimming. And I love that you're talking about that there is a function for the behavior, because this is one of those conversations where people sort of divide, because there are people who think that any stimming should be stopped, which that makes me crazy personally, because we all have stuff that we do that's self-stimulatory. And I think if we come from a point of view where we look at what the function is, that we're automatically assuming that it does have a function, which is important, because a lot of people think it serves no purpose but to annoy me, which is never the case.
Yeah.
And that it is actually doing something for the individual, and that we wouldn't even start to intervene until we understood what that was and had an understanding of how to replace it.
Exactly.
Because we're not just ripping things away from people and going, don't rock because rocking makes me nervous.
That's right.
And it's that kind of thinking that we have to get away from, I feel. And I think it's important because we have so many people who misunderstand what ABA is, and they need to understand that that is critical to ABA, is that understanding that there is a function.
That's
and
right.
that we don't just take it away, we replace it.
That's exactly right, and you defined it very well. I will say that even within the best ABA, even within high quality ABA, it is often the case that behavior analysts will just look at generally any kind of self-stimulatory behavior as having an automatic function. There is that belief that this is self-reinforcing in some way, right? And then, unfortunately, I think we don't take the next step, which I think the next step is super important, because it's important to identify, how does it self-reward? What is it doing that is rewarding intrinsically? And if you think about it, there are so many different things that we do that are in the action itself, that it produces some internal reward. You gave a great example. And these are things we learn over time. So let's talk about rocking, right? Like rocking, what function does body rocking or doing this have, right? And initially when you look at this, you think it has no function at all. It must have some sort of internal intrinsic reinforcement, and people will wonder what it is. I will never forget the day when I was taking a course in, I think it was like neurophysiology or some brain anatomy or something. And the professor who was teaching this was talking, not at all, it had nothing to do with autism, just talking about, how the brain affects the behaviors that we have. And so he was telling me that one of the ways that we can activate the parasympathetic portion of the autonomic nervous system, the parasympathetic portion is the portion that is calming. So the sympathetic portion of the autonomic nervous system is when we have, the fright or flight instincts, like something horrible happens and you immediately act on it. So after that, there's the parasympathetic activation, which is you calm down, right? Calming. He was telling us that one of the most common ways of activating the parasympathetic is rocking. Okay, and that is why we also have rocking chairs, and it's kind of interesting. And I will never forget that, because it immediately made me think that, we call these behaviors self-stimulatory, but in some ways they are self-calming. And this action is definitely a self-calming activity. So that's a great example of how there is an underlying reason for the behavior. We talk about all the self-stimulatory behaviors that our kids have that are visual in nature. And there is a function, as we know from a lot of presentations of Dr. Temple Grandin, there is a huge stimulation factor that involves visual for our kids, right? So all of these things are super important to understand, because if we're going to, as you said, Shannon, if we're going to try to replace them, for whatever reason, maybe they're not socially appropriate, maybe they prevent the individual from interacting with society, whatever it is, we first need to make sure we understand what is actually causing it. and that we allow the individual to have some form of replacement that is satisfactory to the individual and not interacting or taking them away from society.
Yeah, and this, for me, this is where we really get into autism acceptance. I've talked about this many times on the show, but I'm still hooked up about last summer on the show Big Brother. There was a wonderful young man who actually had won Big Brother before and came back on. And when he was on before, he did not disclose that he was on the spectrum. And this time he disclosed. And he told all of the people that were in the house with him that he was on the spectrum. They instantly looked at him in a different way, and he was a rocker. Ian would rock. They all had to get together when it was time to vote somebody off, and they would all be nervous and on camera. And there Ian would be, and he would rocking. And several of the housemates were not tolerant of it and said, "It makes me nervous. I wish you would stop that." Blah, 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 blah. But if you look at the video, they're all doing something. There's one girl who was compulsively petting her hair and checking the, and just like this. And she was one of the people who was complaining. And then there's another one whose foot is just going like this, and she's complaining that he's rocking. And I'm like, lady, stop your foot.
Yeah.
Tell me how that feels. If somebody says your foot thinging, or stop playing with your hair. It's, for me, it's ignorance and intolerance.
It's intolerance. Yeah, I agree. And it's stigma, right? It's stigmatizing.
Yes.
The language we use. This is what I always told parents when parents first come to see me for diagnosis. I always tell them this because I honestly believe that language has such a significant effect on how we process things. When you call when someone comes in and I diagnose them, that word ASD or autism spectrum disorder, it has so much meaning for the parent, and a lot of times this meaning is not the one that I want them to believe in. It's some meaning that they have coming in. For example, one meaning is autism, it's lifelong, and that is, to me, those things are words. Like when you say someone has autism, immediately everyone is going to give that meaning and think, oh, this person is going to behave strangely around me, right? And therefore their rocking is something that's intolerable. Like it just keeps trickling. And to me, that's not the way to look at it at all. It's just, the way to look at it is basically, are there symptoms that this individual is struggling with, or are there behaviors that accompany or that this individual is having a hard time just kind of interacting with others? Are there things that the individual wants to overcome? Just like all of us, we all have these things.
Yes, it's important for us to be looking at, like you do. As I said at the start of the show, I love the way you look at people as individuals and not look at them as a clump that need to be limited by anything. I'm going to pivot now. I love Parker's question, as I often do. She says, he says, "Hi, Dr. Doreen. Things are opening up across the country and the world. A lot of people are having a hard time with the new rules, like no waiting inside at an Applebee's for a table, for example. Any advice, not just for myself, but for everyone?" We're all struggling with this, Parker, so thank you for asking.
Yeah, that's right, Parker. I appreciate that. I mean, and I think it's it is difficult. I think a lot of people they're just fed up. They've had it. It's been over a year. Everybody's very exhausted from this and very anxious to get out there. And we just all have to learn to be a little bit more patient and adjust to the new rules, and allow society to get to a point where it's safe. Because the worst thing, and we've seen this happen over and over in multiple other countries, and is that it can get worse again. It can get worse again if we don't adhere to these rules. And we're so blessed in the US right now. I mean, we have so many people internationally writing in, and Shannon, we often, I don't know if today, but we often have folks coming online with us from India, for instance. And I read what's going on in India, and it just breaks my heart. There are parts of the world that are still struggling tremendously with COVID. And, I think that it is really, really important to be respectful and to not just of the rules that are out there, but of other people. This is the other part of this, Shannon. People are going to have a different level of comfort as we reopen. There's going to be, and like I know this because, excuse me, I travel a lot through the US, and it's completely different in California, where I am right now, as opposed to Florida, where I also reside. And when I go to Florida, when I first went to Florida in 2020, I was pretty shocked because it's very open in contrast to California. And so is Texas, for instance. And I personally found myself being a little bit uncomfortable in those environments initially. I was always wearing a mask. I still am when I go to those places. And a lot of people will actually give you a hard time if you're wearing a mask. And they will say, "Oh, come on, it's over now. Take off your mask. It's all, it's fine," and all this sort of stuff. And you have to, everybody has to kind of just be respectful of each other's level of comfort, of the rules, of, we're all trying. It's like going to someone's house and making fun of them if they recycle, for instance. We're doing something that is good for humanity. So I think we all need to be more patient about it.
Well, and I think just being accepting of, as you said, that everybody's got different levels of everything going on. Parker said that he, almost had an incident over the Applebee's thing. And, I think we all have to be loving and kind to ourselves
Yeah.
first, but to other people as well. And, that's one of the things that autism has taught me. I can remember standing in line at a grocery store with Jem, and he was in the basket of the grocery cart, and he was having a hard time. We're in the line, in the chute, right? And I was trying to keep him focused and keep him distracted because I didn't want other stuff to happen. And there was a little boy in front of us who kept, my son had a scarf on, and he kept grabbing Jem's scarf and pulling on it. And I was saying to him, "Thank you. We don't touch other people." And, and thank you, and trying to be very nice, and sort of looking at his mom like, do something here.
Yeah.
And, and I was very about, come on, lady, my kid. And of course, my head went into, my kid has autism. Police your child. Get your child under control. I've got enough to deal with here. She was doing nothing. And I kept looking, giving her the stink eye. You know what I'm saying? And then eventually I took the scarf off and put it in my bag because the child wouldn't, and I was afraid he was going to choke him. And the mother said, "You could be a little nicer. He has autism."
Oh my gosh.
And I said, "This child also has autism. Nice to meet you," and stuck my hand out, another, in another realm, we don't do that now. But I said, "Nice to meet you." And then there was this moment where she realized that I was judging her, and that she was judging me. We both were looking and going, "Oh, you have other circumstances going on. You can't appreciate where I'm coming from." And in that moment, we both realized, everybody has their stuff.
Wow.
And I always think about that. So if you're having a hard time at Applebee's, it's possible, Parker, that everybody in line is having a different hard time that's different than yours. And while that may not help you to know that in the long term, I think starting by being kind to ourselves, Dr. Grant-Pichet, that's what I have to do when I'm going up against these new rules. I want to yell, I want to scream, and I want to go, "Hey, you're not paying attention to the rule, and I am." And then I have to remind myself, what do I want to do for myself right now?
Well,
And take care of me first.
Yeah, I'm with you. And what an amazing example you gave, Shannon. I didn't know that story. I love that. That's such a good example. But yeah, absolutely. Everybody's going through their own difficult times. Some people have a great deal of depression right now. Others are just extremely anxious, and a lot of people just don't even want to leave home because we've been told to be so cautious. So everybody is like, it's just weird. Like the first time you go out to a restaurant. I mean, honestly, the other day, my son, as you know, who has a lot of humor, was posted on our family chat, a picture of me in the first, like in March of 2020, when I was like wearing kind of one of those painter suits, you know, and I
Yes.
had a mask on and a shield, and I'm cleaning groceries outside the house, right? And he was like, and this is what mom was doing in March. And I was like, hey, you know, we didn't know what this is, right? We thought that it's a virus that can sit on things, and we're like cleaning everything. We didn't know what it is at that point.
This is
So
still me. I love
yeah.
that you think that that is so a year ago. This is still me. I have to
Yeah.
show you at some point the hood that we bought, so that if we have to go out, yeah, and I'm still cleaning groceries. So just to show you the level of, you
There
know,
you go.
where people are at. Everybody's at a different place. And the rules in some places are all new, and some people aren't good at the observing rules, like seeing other people adhere to a rule and observe to it. I think we're just going to see that there's going to be all different levels for a while.
Yes.
And some people are uncomfortable, as you said, with other people wearing masks, and they're saying things to people who are wearing masks that are rude. It's a little bit the Wild West right now. So Parker, I just want to encourage you to be loving to yourself, because it's hard right now.
Okay.
I gotta switch to Nazra. She says, good morning. I have an adult autistic nonverbal son. My question is, do you think that adult young people have a chance to overcome? And she is from St. Paul.
I love the word.
Um,
I really love the word overcome. And the reason
mhm.
I love that is because it really is about overcoming your obstacles, or overcoming the things that hinder you, I guess, or that you find to be a hindrance. And the answer is yes. There are a lot of adults who have learned just like we learn. And this is kind of one of the important, like, interesting things, of course, to me. When I was developing a lot of our ABA programs at CARD, I would, when I was had the opportunity to work with our kids directly, I would notice that the way they're learning is exactly the same way I learned other languages. So, you know, English is not my first language. English is my second language, and I speak three other languages other than English. And the level of fluency that I have with those is exactly like our kids. It's exactly the same thing. Like, I will, you know, in certain languages, I have to really think to find words. And I know our kids go through that. In certain languages, I still don't have things classified in a way that I can retrieve them rapidly. So I'm not yet fluent. You know, it's just all of it is exactly the same way that our kids go through this. And so I know that I overcome these obstacles. The more I practice, the more it is broken down for me, the more it is given to me in chunks that are the way that I like to learn. And with whether it's a child, adolescent, or adult, whatever on the spectrum, everyone has strengths as well as areas that need help and support. So a lot of times I will tell you that adults or teens or children that I have on the spectrum have a difficult time with auditory input, but they have a tremendously strong visual input and visual memory. In fact, in a lot of cases, their memory is even stronger than all of ours. The way they see things, their pattern recognition is much stronger than ours. There are a lot of things that are a lot stronger. And so I think a lot of our adults kind of compensate, right? Just like we all do. They figure out how to use their strengths, and they sort of avoid the areas that they're not so strong in, right? And with good, high quality ABA and other interventions, social types of interventions, they become more and more comfortable with practice. And as they do, they can overcome a lot of those things that would prevent them from leading happy, healthy lives. So, yes, the answer is I do believe that whether you start intervention as a child, adolescent, adult, at whatever phase, there's always going to be progress, and you will overcome obstacles. Now, sometimes I want to be honest and say sometimes I see children and adults who are so severely affected and have maybe medical illnesses and immune dysfunction and seizures and sleep disorders and anxiety and so many other things going on at the same time, that and apraxia and so on. And they've not learned for a very long time how to communicate, that they have all these aggressive behaviors and frustration and so on. And it's a mishmash of all these things that have happened. And it takes a little while to sort all that out and get the individual to a place of peace before they can start to learn and overcome their own obstacles. But that being said, I don't know anyone who doesn't learn. So yes, it is very, very absolutely possible for an adult to have a very healthy, happy life.
There we go. I want to say thank you to Mirtha, Renee, and Elvira, who are asking about Spanish subtitles. We do not yet have a way to do it real time, although I will ask Traven to look into it on Restream. I know on some of the other StreamYard, they have a setting for that. So we'll look into that. I will tell you that when we podcast, for instance, we're on YouTube, and that you can print out, there's a place where it allows you to do translation into different languages, and then you can print that out. It's a little hard to follow along, but it's what I have for the moment. But we will definitely look into that, and I really appreciate that. Over the years, because we've been doing this for a hot minute here, over the years, we've had different people join us. I loved when we were doing Autismo y Familia with Juan Ronderos, the best name ever. And I loved doing that. There's a great interview that we did a very last minute, where we had Temple Grandin and Juan and myself, where we were asking Temple in questions, and then Juan was translating in real time. It's one of my favorite interviews we've ever done with Temple Grandin. So want to encourage people to look at that. But thank you. And thank you for translating for the guest who is asking questions in Spanish, Renee and Elvira. We really appreciate that. It takes a village.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of our village, as you know, Shannon, some of our viewers may not know that we also, all you and I and some of our other friends, work very hard at our other organization, Autism Care Today, and which is our non-profit organization. And I want to say that one of our board members, I was actually meeting with her and having lunch yesterday, is Gabriela Tessier, and who is on Univision and has her own show every morning. And the reason that we met yesterday was that Gabriela was telling me that she really, really wants to engage and do more for the Spanish-speaking population, and she feels that there's, we need to talk to her and develop some programming and ideas and stuff so that she can give to the Spanish community and help them with understanding ABA and autism. And I said that you and I would get together with her. So we will wait until your second vaccine, and then we'll go see her.
I will love that. I will absolutely love that. She's amazing. Check her out on Univision, you guys. She's amazing. Okay. Hi, Shannon and Dr. Grampiche. I'm contacting you from Austria. Is there a card service provider in Washington, D.C. or Silver Springs, Maryland area, please?
Yes. So we are all over, and I saw that, I think there was another question about Central Virginia. So we are all over Washington, D.C. In fact, I think the D.C. site, or one of the D.C. sites, was like my third or fourth site, and we're, past 250 sites right now at CARD. So we have multiple sites in the Maryland, Virginia, and Washington, D.C. area. We also have academies in those states, which is super nice, especially in the Virginia area. And our academies are schools. So it's basically all day long Our kids are in school, it's one-to-one. It's exactly the therapy. I would love to do academies all over the country, but I think Virginia is one of the few states that gives us a decent tuition for this, so we're able to actually afford to do one-to-one. But so we have academies and we have clinics all over. So just go on the Center for Autism website, centerforautism.com, and you'll see all the locations.
Wonderful. Sarah wants to know regarding social awareness. My child is 22 months. He is verbal. However, he doesn't acknowledge his peers. It's like they don't exist. Does this get better with good quality ABA? Love that question.
Yeah, I love that question too. And yes, it does get better, Sarah. It definitely. So social. It's so amazing. It's one of those really key observations I think that you've made here in your question, Sarah, is that sometimes our kids are actually verbal, but they're so kind of focused on their own world and busy in their own world that they really don't pay attention to the world of others, which is the social world. So, and it's almost like they don't even know they're there, right? And good quality ABA can teach the child to slow down and to observe. In fact, a big area of instruction that we do at CARD is called observational learning, where it really teaches you to observe others and learn from others. And that is and not just that, but another big area of focus in autism is this whole area called theory of mind. And theory of mind is about perspective taking. So it teaches the individual to take the perspective of others. And all social behavior that we have depends on having a knowledge or having an ability to somewhat take the perspective of others. Now, some people are very good at that and others are not so good at that, but nevertheless, we, when you're typically functioning, you're always exchanging that perspective all the time. All the time we're thinking, how does that person feel? What are they thinking? How do they know that? All these types of things. And as you teach those individual skills of perspective taking, and you teach the child to kind of pay attention to the social environment, learn from the social environment, and follow social rules. That's the other portion of it. If you do all of those things, which you do in a really good ABA program, then yeah, absolutely. The child learns that, oh, there's a lot of reinforcers that I can come into contact with if I interact socially. And then they begin to do
that. One of the questions that we had, the one from Central Virginia, wanted to know, how do we recognize the best quality ABA? What do we look for? What questions should we be asking to see if somebody is doing quality ABA? We need 6 hours for that, but can you do it in 6 minutes?
Well, we do need 6 hours for that, but I mean, I think, Shannon, you are writing an article on this subject, right?
Yes.
And it's a really important subject because there are a lot of different things, right? I mean, one is that, first of all, you want to make sure whoever sees your child, I think, I'll just do very quick, and then Shannon, please throw in yours because you had some really good ideas when I was reviewing yours. But, from my perspective, high quality ABA begins with a really in-depth assessment of your child, because every child is extremely different. And then it's about understanding your child's strengths and weaknesses and areas where they need some support and areas where we need to develop just so they feel good about themselves, the strengths. And then in addition to that, I think a good ABA provider is open to looking at your child as a whole human being. So they don't just focus on overt behaviors, but they also focus on kind of the health of the child and making sure that the child is not ill and is getting adequate sleep and is able to learn all the things we want to teach them through ABA. And then the next portion becomes, you have all of that. You want to make sure they're using good quality ABA techniques. They have really good ABA therapists. They have good training for their therapists, because those are the frontline people working with your child day in and day out. So that's important. That you are given adequate hours. A lot of times what frustrates me, Shannon, is that I have 2-year-olds who are, the provider is offering them 10 hours. And all the research in the world shows that 10 hours with a 2-year-old is just not enough. So, you want to make sure that you're getting a lot of intensive hours when you have a very young child, because that's the period of time that the brain has the highest level of flexibility and can soak in all this information. And it's also the time that the child isn't obligated to do academics yet. So we have a lot of time to teach the child everything we need to. So all of those things. And then another part of really good ABA is making sure they listen to you and partner with you and pay attention to the things that are important to you. Another good part of it is that they continuously assess how the child is doing, and they change things in order for the child to continue succeeding. That's very important, because if you're just stuck in a way and the child is not doing well and you don't think like, maybe I should be giving visual instructions, changing your program, if you're not doing that, then the child can't succeed. This is still a field where we're constantly trying to figure out how to best communicate with our kids. So, being an open provider, someone who's flexible and open to learning and improving is very vital.
All of that is amazing. And I think one of the things that I always tell people, that where I sort of see where it separates, the forest from the trees, is if you're talking to an ABA provider and, you say to them, so, they're going to say, well, we want to fully assess your child. It's a big, long investment, and then we'll tell you what we want to do. But I think if you start by saying, can you tell me, for instance, if you have a child that's under the age of 4, can you tell me, are there other children at your center that are receiving a full 40-hour program?
That's a great one.
Like to see, like, do they believe in that? Or are they about giving everybody the watered down, I don't want to say the words I'm thinking, right? Like, is there another child that is in the same age that's got a full 40-hour program? Okay. And if there is, okay, great. And what they might say to you, I would think that the right response from a good ABA provider is, yes, we do, but it's only when the parents make the child fully available. That's a good answer to me. But then the next thing is that if you say to them, pick something that you know that you want your child to work on, whether it's toilet training or something else, and saying, okay, for instance, one of the things we're looking for is to have our child be toilet trained. How will you plan for generalization from minute 1 with that? Ask that question, because if they go, well, I would have to get back to you on that. That's not your provider. Mm-hmm. I just see, Dr. Graham-Pichet, that's one of those things as a parent that I totally didn't understand for a long time. But once I understood it, it was like I always say, like the arrow on the FedEx truck, you can't unsee it. Mm-hmm. And I think it's one of the most important things is that you get somebody who understands that piece of generalization, that they plan before the first lesson. And something like toilet training, that doesn't, of course they can say to you, well, it will be specific to the child and specific to the family. Yes, but you could answer, how do we generalize toilet training without knowing the child, right?
That's right. And it's such a very important point you made, Shannon. And it goes both ways, I want to say. So it's kind of like, make sure that the things that the child learns are generalized. That's part one. And the reverse of it too is that make sure that there's a certain type of kind of discrete trial type instruction prior to generalization. Because a lot of times what happens is like providers will want to teach something and they're just trying to teach it the normal way in like a natural environment, and it doesn't work. You need to do all that rote practice too, so that the child can figure things out and then generalize. You're absolutely right.
And thank you for saying that, because there is this new trend among, I guess because all these schools are churning out all of these BCBAs all over the place, but there's this new trend, and I love me some BCBAs. Let's not be mistaken here. They're some of my favorite people on the face of the planet, and they're the ones who, were architects of me getting my child back. So I love them. But there's this new school of BCBAs where they're squeamish about the DTT, and they're all about natural environment training because they think that parents will dislike them if they want to do DTT.
Right.
And I, as a parent of a child who's doing really well, am on a crusade to get parents to understand what DTT is, what it looks like, and why we don't, because when my son was getting therapy, there were ABA providers who just did DTT. We were on the other side of the fence, and getting people to do DTT and then bring it into the natural environment was like pulling teeth if you weren't with CARD. Just pulling teeth. Now it's swung completely the other way, and people are like, we all want to get together and sing Kumbaya, and the kids will be able to learn that way. Well, guess what? If we could have done that and it would have worked, we would have done that to begin with, and our kids would have learned a jamboree, and you wouldn't need ABA. But I go back to my metaphor of and my analogy of the learning ballroom dancing. If you're going to learn to do ballroom dancing, you're going to go in and they're going to have the little feet on the floor with numbers. Yeah. And you're going to learn it that way first.
Right. That's right.
So that then when you put the music on, you know what you're doing. And that's what DTT is in ABA. It's that first little step. You can't get stuck there, but it is what helps our kids rocket in the natural environment. And if you're getting a program without DTT, or you have a BCBA who's like, well, I don't really like DTT, then they don't really like for kids to do better. I got snotty there. I didn't mean to. But I get upset about it. It's like, why would you leave out the first step?
Yeah, and it's not, I mean, and again, it's I don't want to be critical of providers out there, but the trends change, as you said, and you always want to make sure that your child is receiving the type of DTT that is the most efficient and effective at that stage of their development.
Yeah, it's a fine art. It's a fine art, but if you feel like once you've had these conversations, and if you feel like it's a provider who's going to work with you, sees your child as an individual, has a plan, and you start with them, you know, there are going to be times when your child is going to fuss, and you have to be willing to deal with that. But very quickly, your child should be having fun, and your child should be seeing improvement. And all kids will, well, I don't know about all kids, but I've seen a lot of kids, and my kid included, where he'd make a lot of progress and then he would sort of plateau. And then what I would see in my high quality ABA program from CARD is that then they would start looking at everything and trying everything when he would plateau. Nobody accepted the status quo when he would plateau, including talking with me about what had we done dietary, what had we done medically, to look at how do we get the trajectory going like this and not at the plateau. Yeah. So important. All right. Amanda says, when it comes to insurance and assessments, it takes a long time depending on the child's age. So insurance won't always pay for enough allotted time to assess, at least in my experience. I wish insurance gave more time. Now, Dr. Grant-Pichet, you assess. Do you feel that there's some truth to that when you do it, or what do you think?
I think Amanda is right. There is some truth to that. I have so many years behind me and so many credentials that I have a little bit more success in bullying the insurance companies when it comes to the kids I want to assess. But I think she's right. If you want to do a really good assessment, sometimes it takes a lot of hours, and it's really important. How we deal with it, I guess, at CARD, and I think this is for all BCBAs out there who are trying to assess, is that we divide it into different buckets. So first of all, there's a series of assessments that I think are vital in the very beginning. And so we focus on those. Those are sort of the ones that we are usually allotted enough time to do the basic assessments that kind of help us identify the core competencies of the individual that we're going to treat, and the core areas of problematic areas or struggle. And then we also have, as you know, Shannon, developed a very, very intense, detailed developmental assessment, which is the skills index, the skills assessment. And that, fortunately, is an assessment that is filled out by the caretaker, the caregiver. So it could be The long version, as you know, of the skills assessment is extremely detailed. It does take a while, but it's the parent filling it out, and that really, really helps us identify like what is going on with the child, what are their strengths, what are the issues, what do we need to do. So in other words, some of it we do, some of it the parent does, and then the ones that we need to continue doing, we sort of do on an ongoing basis. So let's say 6 months into the intervention, we will do a series of other assessments when we can get additional observation time funded. And we also assess the child every week we have this process where we meet with the family and the child continuously and review kind of the progress. And of course, our data collection. I mean, ABA is so good when it comes to like just collecting ongoing data. So I agree with Amanda. It would be much nicer to have the number of hours you really need for each child, because some kids also, I'll say this, like a 2-year-old who's relatively high functioning, you're going to need to assess less than a 16-year-old who has severe challenging behaviors. So it's just that and you get the same number of hours. So Amanda's right.
Sarah wants to know 20 hours at 2 years and 40 hours at 3 years prescribed, ? Does that?
Yeah, I mean, usually I like to I like to start with 20 hours or so with my 2-year-olds, maybe 15 to 20, because I don't want to shock their system. And I will gradually increase it. If you're going with that prescription, then by the time the child's like 2.5, you're going to already be building up to about 30 hours. By the time they're 3, you're looking at about 40 hours. And a lot of our viewers are going to kind of freak out at that and think, yep, oh my God, how am I going to do 40 hours with a 3-year-old? And first of all, ideally, you want to divide that over the course of 7 days, not 5. And if you are able to divide that over the course of 7 days, then you're looking at 5 to 6 hours a day. And if you think about the number of hours that the child is awake, let's say from just 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., and that's 12 hours, and let's take 2 hours off of that for nap time and various other things. And then you have 10 hours a day, of which you want to schedule 5 to 6 hours in 1 or 2 hour blocks. Now with our 2-year-olds, a lot of the time I will start out with 1 hour blocks because I don't want them to get tired. Now, all that being said, please remember, all of our viewers, that it is not like intensive tutoring that is extremely difficult for the child. The ABA is extremely rewarding. It's like fun, one-to-one. Every accomplishment is celebrated with all kinds of reinforcers. And so it is, while it's difficult to do 5 to 6 hours per day, 7 days a week, it becomes extremely enjoyable for the child after the first few months. First few months are difficult, I will say, because most of our children are not used to having had any kind of demand placed on them. And now we're asking them simple things like, come here and sit down and let's work on some subjects together. And the child might not want to do that initially. But a good therapist will reward the child, make it very fun, go at a pace that is challenging but not aversive. And then the whole program becomes so much fun. I like to tell parents that a lot of times I hear stories from parents where their child is sitting, looking out the window, waiting for their therapist to get there because they love it so much.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember the first time somebody, and I remember who it was, who said to me, they're going to recommend 40 hours a week for your kiddo. And I was like, you're out of your mind. 40 hours? That's a full-time job. He's a child. He has Caillou to watch. Like, he's got stuff to do. And they were like, yep, it seems crazy, but that's what you need to do. You asked us how our kid got better. That's what you need to do. And I went, okay, let me, figure this out. And I saw, my child, the doorbell would ring and he would do that run when they run across the carpet, where he would jump up in the air and his little legs would be moving in the air, but he wasn't touching the ground. And he loved some of his therapists. He would go, Pidu, 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 Pidu at the door, because he was so excited to see Peter. And that's when you know you're doing it right, man, when they are so excited and they will miss their therapist. Then there's the flip, because then those therapists leave and they go off of your team. And parents want to hoard those therapists, but we have to let them come and we have to let them go and let new therapists come and then let them go, because that's how we get to that generalization piece. But I'm telling you, it was hard. I don't want to candy coat it. It was really, really hard. Best thing that I will ever be a part of in my life was my child doing a 40-hour program. Best thing ever. And if you have a child that you want to connect with and that you want to give them their best chance, I'm telling you, I'm begging you, do this favor for yourself so that your stomach, I've said forever that my picture in my head was that someday he was going to stand in a cap and gown. And that when he did, I wanted to be able to say to him, we did everything that we could. And I'm about 6 weeks away, you guys. I'm telling you, go do this for yourself and for them. They deserve it. You deserve it. All right, I gotta stop being emotional.
I love that.
What do you recommend for special ed setting for nonverbal children, distinct or assimilated?
That's a very loaded question and a tough one to answer. I guess I don't really want to answer that because I have different, it depends on the age of the child, the functioning level of the child. Has the child had intervention or not? In some case, if the child, I do support special education or what you're referring to, I think, as sort of distinct or separated. If the child needs that, if the child is not able to assimilate, is not able to benefit from a program that is more mainstream. But most of the time with my kids, I'm trying to give them intensive tutoring and support and lots of ABA so that they are able to assimilate and able to integrate. But it really does depend on the age, functioning, and prior services of the individual.
Okay. Somebody wrote in and said, I've been doing RBT training on skills, which reminds me we haven't done our skills thing for today. And they said they love Jack Riley. Can we know how he's doing? Just curious. For those of you who don't know, we did a series called The A Word with a little boy named Jack Riley, where we followed him for a couple of years as he did ABA. And it was such a great series. Jack Riley is now a teenager, and his parents asked if we could stop showing the videos for a period of time while he finds his way in the world, and that eventually they will ask him how he feels about it. And then we may or may not bring the videos back. Can I just say that to her credit, Dr. Grampiche didn't blink an eye, said, of course, that's what's best for him. And said, Shannon, take down the videos. And I, one of the many reasons why I respect you so much, because a lot of people would have been like, no, we have releases for that, we're sticking with it. And she said, nope, that's what's best for him. So they're maintaining their anonymity, but I hope someday soon Jack Riley will be out in the public eye again, if it is good for him and if it is his choice. But can we take a quick second here at the end of the program to talk about our skills message, because they mentioned the RBT. So yeah. Several times during the program, Dr. Grampiche referenced skills, and someone else had written in about adults, and someone else mentioned skills living. So I want to make sure that we acknowledge that as well. Every week they offer something free to you guys. This week for ABA parents and guardians, they're offering a free IBT, Institute for Behavioral Training, parent e-learning course, Parent Overcoming Challenging Behaviors. Run, don't walk. It's free. Get it for yourself. I'm going to give you a phone number in a second. For the educator community, they're offering educator e-learning module, educator teaching communication. Get that. We're a week away from Teacher Appreciation Week. Get that for your teacher. It's free right now. And then they are continuing to offer that RBT 2.0 training course free for parents on a case-by-case basis, which I think that parent is doing. That's normally a $440 course. It's the beginning e-learning of what therapists learn before they begin to do ABA. It's so good for parents, you guys. and they're offering 10% off of all of the skills products. All you have to do is call 877-975-4559. You can also call them and ask them about that adult program, the teen and adult program, Skills Living, that Dr. Granpeesheh was talking about. It's the best thing that there is, you guys, for adults. Again, the phone number, 877-975-4559. Dr. Granpeesheh, we have a little less than a minute. Did you have anything that you wanted to add to that?
No, I just want to say, I love you, Shannon. I'm so proud of Jen.
I love you more.
I can't wait to attend his graduation upcoming, and you are an inspiration to so many people. And I agree with you, and it's an amazing, crazy journey, but it is a fantastic journey when you see your child doing so well. And Jim is a superstar, and I'm so excited to see him go off to college.
Me too. And I, when you say you love me, I always say I love you more, because that's the truth. It's like there are no words. As Oprah says, there aren't enough shoes in the world to thank you. And I hope that people know that I'm coming from a place in my heart when I say, please do this. Yeah. I know many people that have stood in your shoes and had a moment where they're like, well, I could do ABA and I can go half in, or I can do ABA and I can go all in, or I can go do something else, or I can do nothing. I've seen all of those outcomes. And we could do the regret parade of people who say to me, I should have listened to you. I should have done this. I should have, would have, could have. Don't just and whatever age you are at, or your child is at right now, help yourself now, today. Today's the day. And you won't regret it. I don't know anybody that says I went all in with ABA that goes, gosh, wish I hadn't done that. Haven't met a single person, which is very telling, right? All right. Much love to you, Dr. Granpeesheh. Thank you for continuing to be there and be such an advocate for our families and for individuals on the spectrum. It means so much to us. We are back tomorrow. I have no idea who's on the show because I'm all verklempt, but something great, I am sure. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now. Thank you, Dr. Granpeesheh. Bye-bye. Good morning and happy Cinco de Mayo. We are here. This is Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and you can see our special guest today. It's Ask Dr. Doreen Day, and Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is here with us live. And we are going to be live for the next hour. She is going to be answering your questions. I want to tell you that there are many different ways to send your question in. If you're watching us live right now on Wednesday, Cinco de Mayo, then you're seeing us either on Facebook Live, on Twitter, on YouTube, or you might be watching us on our homepage, autism-live.com. If you're watching on any of the social networks, you can write your comments directly into them and they will show up here on our screen. If you have longer comments, we do encourage you to do that at autism-live.com. Or you can send messages, not live messages, because I can only have so many windows open. I'm one of those people, can't walk and talk and chew gum at the same time. So, but if you're watching us recorded and you want to send in a question, you can send it directly to me at s.penrod@autism-live.com. I love to get your questions and your comments, and more importantly, Dr. Granpeesheh loves to get them as well. I do want to reiterate that this show is live right now, but we podcast it later on. So you can download any of our shows. It's a free download wherever you get your podcasts. We're literally everywhere. And we want to thank all of you for making us the #1 autism podcast worldwide. We're so thrilled that you guys have believed in us enough and shared us enough and liked us enough that is the rating that we currently have. And we're very excited and grateful to you for that. Our mission here is to provide information and inspiration. So please, if you find something that you believe is worthwhile here, do share it, do like us, do follow us on Facebook or on YouTube, and we promise that we will keep delivering you that content. But we'd like to get to more people around the world. And I love it on Wednesdays when it's like a UN meeting. We have everybody from everywhere around the world joining us, and we're thrilled to have you guys here. Feel free to go ahead. You can start right now writing in your comments into the chat if you have questions, or just say hello to Dr. Granpeesheh. I want to welcome her. Welcome, Dr. Granpeesheh.
Hi, Shannon, and hello, everyone. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you.
For people who don't know Dr. Granpeesheh, whenever possible, she joins us on Wednesday morning. She donates her time to be answering your questions. She is a true, I believe, the preeminent expert in the field of autism in our time. She is the founder of the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, also the founder of the amazing charity Autism Care Today that has given away well over $1 million. I think they've surpassed the $2 million mark in services and support. I'm saying good morning to George and Diana for writing in. And one of the things that I truly love about Dr. Granpeesheh is that for more than 40 years, and I know that that is shocking as you look at her, you're like, she couldn't have been doing anything for more than 40 years, let alone working professionally in the field of autism. But yes, my friends, it's true. For more than 40 years, she's been working in this field, and she looks at individuals and the support group around an individual. She sees a whole person, whether that's a whole child, a whole teenager, or a whole adult. In fact, you're being recognized, and you're going to be doing a big talk coming up at the end of this month at ABAI, which is a pivotal turning point in the field of autism and an ABA. And I don't think there's anybody else that could do what you are going to do, what you have done your whole career, which is look at individuals on the spectrum as whole people who have more than just a diagnosis of autism, and sometimes have medical issues. And you are really at the forefront of making sure that clinicians in the field of ABA have an understanding of this, have the educational tools to be able to help more families. So we all adore Dr. Granpeesheh. I adore Dr. Granpeesheh. Those of you who watch the show know that my son, would not be where he is today if it weren't for Dr. Granpeesheh and the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. So she's here. She's able to answer your questions. However, the asterisk is that she cannot give individual specific advice in this format. That would be a disservice to the people on the spectrum, because she doesn't have eyes on the situation. But what she can do, if you're very specific with your comments and your questions, is give you information that she has that's the best in the world, about things you might look at, questions you might have, things that you might go back and talk to your expert who has eyes on the situation. Do I have that just about right, Dr. Granpeesheh?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you, Shannon. We'll do our very best to help.
And George, I love your question. You say, are Shannon or Dr. Doreen autistic or have autistic friends and family? And I will let her speak for herself. I do not have a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder. I say all the time that I need to go in for a sensory processing disorder because I have concerns about that. Dr. Granpeesheh and I have talked about that before, and I think you're pretty clear about the fact that I'm doing okay. I don't have a disorder. I might have issues, but I'm doing okay. I'm managing my life. However, this show, we always say this, this show is for the larger autism community, which starts with people on the autism spectrum, but then it includes everyone who loves someone on the spectrum. And that is where I come in. I'm one of so many people, millions of billions of people around the world that loves many people on the spectrum, but that starts with my beautiful son, who is amazing. And I would fight anyone who told me that he was anything less than perfect and amazing. Those are fighting words, right? But I have many friends that are individuals who are on the autism spectrum, and more family that is on the spectrum. So that, George, that's me. Dr. Granpeesheh, would you like to answer?
Sure. I'm also not on the spectrum, George. Having said that, just like Shannon, I not only love lots of individuals on the spectrum, but I've spent most of my life getting to know individuals on the spectrum and working with individuals on the spectrum. So I feel like I am more comfortable and familiar with autism than with typical development. And like So I think my world is all autism and individuals on the spectrum. So I'm still learning, but I do love being in this world, and I love all of the folks that I've worked with and learned from.
And I think I would go so far as to say that at this point in my life, I feel like I am more comfortable in the company of individuals on the spectrum than when I am at an event or with people that aren't. It's just my home, my tribe, that's where I live my life. So that's an interesting thing too. Okay, we're getting a lot of questions. We had some questions that came in that I want to get to, but we're getting a lot of questions that are coming in. And one that just jumps right out at me that Diane is saying, do you believe that a person with ASD can recover? And I'm gonna unloose Dr. Grandpichet on this, but I just want to say for anybody who's having an immediate allergic reaction to the word recover, Dr. Grandpichet will talk to you about, because I think different people have a different idea of what that means, Dr. Grandpichet. So maybe we start there.
Yeah, sure. And thank you, Diane, for asking that question. I would recommend that and I will get to discussing the word recover, but I would suggest that you take a look at a video a film that I made a few years ago called Recovered: Journeys on the Autism Spectrum and Back. So that tells you that I hear an echo. I'm not sure if...
Oh, it might be me. Let me turn down my, it might be me.
Okay, so I am not sure if there are, I know that there's a lot of people who have concerns about the word recover, and I just want to kind of clarify my position on that. I don't think of autism as something bad that you need to be taken away from. I think that it is like any other disorder. It is something that is debilitating enough for some people that they themselves or their parents or guardians would like them to overcome some of the symptoms that act as obstacles in life so that the individual can interact socially and engage with all the wonderful reinforcers that are available in life. So, I know there are people who are sort of feel like recover. Why would that's a bad word, and why do you want to force people to be what they're not? And there's nothing about forcing people when we talk about recovery. It's about people coming to us and saying, hey, I just need to learn to talk better. I need to learn to socialize better. I need to learn to take care of myself and hygiene and safety better. Or parents coming and saying, like you guys, my child can't sleep. My child needs potty training. My child needs whatever it is. And us working towards teaching those specific skills. And once the individual, the child learns enough skills, they no longer have enough symptoms to qualify for a diagnosis. So, and that's essentially happens with a lot of our kids, is just you look at it not as a term or a label, and especially autism. Autism is such a huge spectrum. It's really about looking at just the skills that are not that are holding the individual back, right? The lack of skills that are holding the individual back. And there's so many examples of this. Like, we want our kids to be able to have friends, as an example. So if their social behavior is not acceptable by peers, we want to teach the child how to interact with peers in a way that they can get friends. That's just one example. If a child is frustrated because they can't express what they want verbally, we try to teach them how to express it, either verbally or non-verbally, but to be able to communicate with the world. So the things that we teach are skills that help the individual interact, communicate, have their needs met, socialize, gain reinforcers from their social environment. And all of those types of skills end up in the end removing the diagnosis because the child no longer has those deficits that are part of the diagnostic criteria. You're on mute, Shannon. No. Maybe your volume is too far down. No. I'm gonna let you try to figure out, still can't hear you, but I'm gonna let you try to figure out on your end, and I'll just keep kind of talking about these other questions that are here. Because there's more people coming in that are talking about this subject. And I want to kind of go back to like something that George has written in here, saying that I believe ABA therapy is extremely cruel. And I just want to say, George, it's not at all cruel. And if you think about it, good ABA is not cruel. So if you think about ABA as not a just an intervention. Oh, you can, maybe they can't hear me either. Looks like they can't hear me either, Trayvon. Oh, they can hear me. Okay. So I'm just going to keep talking then. So ABA is basically just what happens in, thank you, George, what happens in real life. If you guys think about it, in real life, we will, for instance, get up in the morning and get dressed and go to work, right? Why do we go to work in the morning? What motivates us? The reason that we get up and go to work is because of many different things. One is we get paid, and the money that we receive is the biggest reinforcer. It's a token. We use that reinforcer to buy all other types of reinforcers like food and shelter and so on, right? But our behavior of getting up and going to work is motivated by the fact that we get paid for it. It is also motivated by things like you want to see your colleagues at work. That's the social motivation. That's also a reinforcer. It's also motivated by things like internal rewards of feeling accomplished and so on. But all of these types of things are reinforcers, right? So we do these things because we receive reinforcers. ABA is basically exactly the same process. It essentially has to do with, oh, I am going to be providing, I'm going to give the child a reinforcer when they do the skill that they want to learn. So for instance, if the child is not talking, I'm going to break down language into the smallest minute steps, and then I'm going to give the child reinforcers when they show me approximations towards speech. Or if the child is not socializing, I'm going to break down social behavior and then give the child access to those particular rewards that they want when they show the social behavior. So all of these types of things, ABA, that's what ABA is. And when people use it correctly, all they're doing is teaching the individual how to access reinforcers in their environment in a way with behaviors that are more appropriate. So and not appropriate to the environment. So I hope I answered that question. And again, don't think of it as something that is I don't know how to explain this. It's just a methodology. It's a technique. It's not necessarily a single program. It's a series of techniques that have to do with simplifying instruction and making it so that kids can learn easier or adults can learn easier. So that's all it is. And I know there are a lot of people who have had bad experiences with ABA, and I feel really bad about that because honestly, there are some organizations where I know that people are not doing ABA and they're being too punitive, there's no punishment in good ABA. So those are some of the things that I want you guys to pay attention to. Shannon, I think you're still working on trying to get back in here. And I'll let you do that. Trayvon, could you send me the link to the questions so that I can try to see questions that are popping up fast? I see one, and I apologize to our viewers because I know lots of questions already came up, but my screen doesn't allow me to see them. So I'm going to just answer the ones that are coming in right now. I wish my very high-functioning Asd 6-year-old received ABA and learned all the skills now rather than later. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially individuals who are very high-functioning, it is always a good idea to do ABA with them. But again, here's a good example where we want to talk about different types of ABA. When I'm dealing with someone who is high functioning, I honestly don't do like the classic type of ABA. I much more likely will do natural environment training because I don't want my student to feel like they are getting bored or it's too repetitive, remote, that kind of thing. So it's important to do the right type of ABA as well. And that's something we all need to pay attention to as well. Shannon, are you back with us or not yet? No, still can't hear you. Oh, no, that's okay. I'm just going to keep going, if that's okay with you. Okay, so Parker asked if are there other diets that I recommend aside from GFCF? Oh my gosh, there are a lot of other diets, Parker. A lot of people are also allergic to soy or corn. And I think it's important that instead of me telling you there's also a specific carbohydrate diet, there's other types of diets. I would really suggest that you connect with a nutritionist. Shannon, I think we have you now.
Oh my gosh, thank goodness.
I heard a dog in the background, so that's great.
Okay, you can hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
so
go ahead and finish what you were doing then. I'll be quiet for a minute. Okay.
Sure. One of our favorite people who has been on Shannon's Autism Live shows is Julie Matthews. She is a fantastic nutritionist. I highly recommend getting on her website, which is Nourishing Hope, I think, right, Shannon? And
Yes.
she has tons of good information on her website, Parker. I would really, I have turned to Julie Matthews for consulting on several of my patients. She's very, very good. And she will do an assessment so that she fully understands what you need as opposed to just what a general diet is.
Wonderful. And I apologize, everybody, because in whatever was happening, we lost a lot of the questions that came in earlier because I had to leave and come back. And when we did that, so if you wrote in a question earlier, please feel free to write it in again now. But we have had some people who are writing in and saying, my child is 7 years old. Do you happen to work with a child who's still recovered at that age? My assumption is that you are saying that your child is just now starting at 7, is just now starting ABA. Is that what your assumption is also, Dr. Grampiche?
Yeah. And I just want to tell you, yes, I have had children recover even if they started at 7. It really has, and again, I don't want recovery to be the only goal here, because let's assume that recovery is the mastery of 100% of the skills that the individual is lagging on, right? And what if your child masters 90% or 80%? Wouldn't you want that? So bottom line is, we just need to get going as soon as possible and start teaching our kids using ABA, which is kind of like it's just a protocol. And it's a type of language or communication with the child. And that way, the younger we start, the more intensively we work, the more the child is going to learn. It's really just that simple. So I would get going immediately.
Okay, and I loved when you were talking about ABA, Dr. Grampiche, because one of the things that we talk about here on the show a lot is quality ABA and the importance of quality ABA. It is literally like, the thing that I've said, I'm going to be talking about it till the day I die. They're going to go to put me in the ground. I'm going to go, wait, one more thing about quality ABA. So I do want to acknowledge that as we're talking about ABA, and I know some of you say that you've had a bad experience or somebody that's had a bad experience. I just want to reiterate, nobody is trying to negate that.
Yes.
But if you have gone to a car dealership and you bought a car and the car didn't work and was a lemon, we would all go, none of us would doubt you when you said that you bought a lemon. None of us would doubt you, but we would never say all car dealerships are bad. So I just want to make sure that we're being clear about that, because there is good quality ABA. I know this for a fact. I am the most helicopter parent that there is. And when I tell you that when I had my son in ABA, we could only have home base. There was no center base back then because it was the dark ages of autism. And my house was wired with nanny cams, and I sat in the other room and watched the therapy and saw I called it the miracle, the autism miracle in my living room, because it was so amazing. And watching it taught me a couple of things. First of all, what they were doing, because back then we didn't have e-learnings where you could go and learn what the therapists were doing, but I watched it sitting watching them. And so I learned a language that they were teaching my child, and how that my child was infinitely teachable and that he could enjoy learning. That's what I learned from the autism miracle in my living room. So I can assure you that there is really good quality ABA out there, and it doesn't traumatize a child, and that it can help them so much. Don't get me emotional, okay? But I just want you to know, nobody's negating that other people have had bad experience with it. Sam wants to know, my son is potty trained for pee, but I cannot get him to do number 2 on the potty. Please help. I think that's a pretty, I think a lot of people, I don't want to say that it's a pretty, I don't like to call anything normal. I think normal is just a setting on the dryer now.
Yeah.
But I think it's a pretty common thing that kiddos get the pee thing faster than the poo thing.
Yeah, that's no question. There's no question. That is absolutely right. But some kids, it takes a very long time with both. So I would recommend that I think we've done several shows on the topic of potty training, and I would assume that they've gone into doing kind of bowel movement training, which is a phase after the urination training. So I would refer to all of those recordings, as well as the Fox and Asrin information, which you can look up online as well, Fox and Asrin toilet training. And so, and those give you step-by-step instructions. It does take a little time. And with the bowel movement training, a bunch of different issues come into play. Sometimes kids are scared of the toilet itself. Sometimes they, have learned to run into a closet and find privacy to go. Sometimes they want the sensation of their diaper when they actually void. So there's a lot of different reasons that might lead to it, but I don't want to go through and tell you solutions to those without you knowing the procedure. So I really recommend that you look at the Fox and Asrin toilet training procedure, but also look at some of our recordings, like, because I know we've had multiple shows on and where we've gone into great detail.
Yes, absolutely. There's so much information about this. And the one thing that I love about the potty training issue is that I remember when my kid was little and I thought, will he ever be potty trained? I was hearing stories of kids that never got potty trained. And then when I met people who are in the world of ABA, they were like, oh yeah, no, that's going to happen. It may not happen on the time schedule that you thought it was going to happen, but that's going to happen. Your child's going to get potty trained. And they're just total like, oh yeah, no, that's not a problem. We've cracked the code on potty training. I was like, well, the world needs to know that, because there's a lot of us running around in fear that will never happen. So I just want to say to you that the fear that you're having that it won't happen, trust me, there, the Fox Nazarene and good ABA, it will happen. He's not going to go off to college in a pull-up if you do all the things that they tell you to do. Because I think that's part of it, Dr. Grampy-Shea, the fear for the caregivers. Okay, the questions are pouring in so fast. Hello, my son communicates his needs, wants. He is now 4.5, but when will he start to communicate with us just randomly? This is a great question.
So you need to do a generalization of the skills that he has already mastered, first of all. So if he's just expressing his needs, that's called manding. And that is wonderful. And that needs to be generalized so that whenever he has a need, he asks. Okay, great. Next phase is that your team, assuming you're doing ABA, would be teaching him labeling, which is called tacting. And that is kind of the next phase of language, which is basically, if you think of typically developing kids and they're like, 2 years old and sitting in the car as you're driving and they're just pointing to things and labeling them like tree and bus and so on. That is the next phase. And so your team needs to be teaching tacting, and then again, they need to generalize it to home so that you will hear your child starting to tact, label things in their environment, in his or her environment. And then after that, it goes on to another phase, which is called intraverbals, which is language that doesn't have kind of a visual cue in front of it. Like a label is a visual cue, right? It's an object that you see and then you label it. Intraverbals are more kind of situation based. So that's things like when the child comes home and tells you what they did in school. So there's no visual in front of them, but it's something that passed and they can talk about it. But these are phases that are taught in the development of language. This is one of the amazing things about ABA, is that it follows a series of steps that allow language development to occur, following typical language development, but with a lot of support and detail. And so that's how you get generalized language.
I love that so many people are writing in and saying, how much progress their kiddos have made and that they want to share that with the world. I want to thank especially Amanda and Ganja for writing in and saying that your kids are making so much progress and how much you believe in good quality ABA, because it is a thing. And I think more people need to know that there is a difference in the good quality ABA. So somebody's written in and said, my grandson doesn't eat and it's very hard to put him to sleep. Again, these are very concerning issues that are all too common in the world of autism, especially for kiddos, but very concerning.
Very concerning. And I'm so glad you got to that question, because I had highlighted that one. I wanted to make sure I respond to that. So neither one of those are things that you as a grandparent can alter on your own. Like, let me just start there, because those are both a little bit difficult. Eating, there's a whole feeding program we have, and I know others have, that is for kids who won't eat. And it is very important to focus on that, because the child will tend to crave things that they are not supposed to eat, things that their immune system is kind of reacting to, or they're allergic to in some ways. And so we don't want to and I would guess, I'm just guessing, that your grandchild is going to be eating a lot of things that are breaded, maybe with carbohydrates. Like, a lot of kids come to me and their parents will be like, yeah, he'll eat things that are like, cheese or gluten, like basically all things they're not supposed to eat. So the reversing of that is a process. It's a feeding program, and it starts with allowing good foods and not allowing those foods that are detrimental. Other kids have issues with just even putting food in their mouth, and because just the sensory aspect of it is intolerable for them, or they have such incredible smell that they won't tolerate certain things. So all of this you have to do in a very, very gradual phase, and it's very hard for parents to do. I wish I had made a video when we had active feeding patients, because it's a process. You start with like very, very small, tiny morsels of foods that the child should eat. Like, for instance, a half of a teaspoon of something that the child should eat, and you reward that with a lot of what the child wants to eat, their breaded products or the stuff that they want, or other reinforcers if they're not eating anything at all. Like, you can turn on the TV when they take that spoonful of what you want them to eat. And then it's a shaping procedure where you gradually increase that. I really, really recommend that you work with a BCBA, a behavior analyst, because this is one of those things that all behavior analysts are trained on to do. It's shaping up food and eating the right foods, and actually just eating. I mean, I've had children who were on a G-tube because they didn't eat at all. That's how particular they were. And within, I want to say 6 months, they were eating a completely normal diet, a very healthy diet. So that's very doable. And actually, I really recommend it because eating and all the movement that goes on in the mouth is actually also very good for kids who have apraxia, low muscle tone in the tongue and in the mouth. So all eating, chewing, the tongue movements that occur when you're eating, all of that is very good for speech. And I think this parent also had, this grandparent, you also wrote about sleep. Sleep is also one of those things that's very difficult for parents and grandparents to deal with, because our children get used to the comfort. Now, again, it goes back to that theory of reinforcement that I was talking about. It's very reinforcing for any child at all, to get up in the middle of the night and go to their parents. Most of our kids do that. But with typically developing kids, at some point, we stop allowing them to do that, right? But with our kids, we are so concerned that they might have a need that they can't express, or we don't know what's waking them up because they can't communicate it with us, that we continue to allow it. And I have many, many families that will tell me that the child wakes up repeatedly or doesn't go to sleep, and it is a behavioral habit that has occurred. On the other hand, there's a lot of things to consider with our kids. Some of our kids have extremely sensitive hearing. There could be noises in the background at night that's waking them up. Other kids have so much going on in the gastrointestinal tract with GI issues and immune dysfunction that they just can't calm down and relax. A lot of our patients take melatonin, which helps them. So sleep is another one where I would really recommend that you, for both of these, you have to, and I apologize because there's a lot to do here, but these are both important things. For the sleep, I would really recommend that you talk to the pediatrician as well as a behavioral person like a BCBA, because the pediatrician can make sure there's no underlying activity, seizures, anything that's disturbing the child. And then the behavioral person can teach good sleep habits, okay? For the eating, I would talk to a nutritionist so that you identify exactly what the child is allergic to or reactive to. And then I would work with a behaviorist to teach the appropriate feeding behaviors.
Okay, wonderful. There was another question, and I'm going to paraphrase because it went away when I was having the problems. But somebody had written in and said that their child, I believe was 4, had been getting ABA, good ABA, for a couple of years, and that is doing quite well in school, which I would assume was preschool. But they're saying that at home, so hyperactive,
Yes.
that they said it's driving them crazy. And I wanted to make sure that we got to that question.
Yes.
Okay. So here, and Traven found it for me. So my son is 6. He's been in ABA for 3 years, has made great progress, but he's so hyperactive. He does a great, and his center, not a preschool, but so hyperactive at home, and is now becoming defiant. I'm losing my mind. I'm sending a hug.
Yeah, I completely understand what you're saying. I've seen children who are extremely hyperactive, and it can be very, very difficult. I am so glad that he's at a center. That means that the child is receiving ABA, assumedly. I would really tell your team that they need to generalize to the home setting. That's essentially what they need to do. That means they need to bring therapy home. They need to start working at home, and they need to work with you. So, for instance, they will first of all bring it to the setting. So, this behavior, he's already mastered the behavior, he just hasn't mastered it across settings and across people. That means to the home and with you. So, I really feel like what you should do is talk to your team and have them come to the house, work a few hours at the house every week, and to engage you and get you and other parents involved so that the other parent involved so that you can all interact the same way.
Okay, wonderful. Can I just put in a plug too when it's ADHD that you were talking earlier about Julie
Oh,
Matthews,
thank
and
you.
for anybody who is watching this, I think it's important to look if you're having ADHD behaviors from any of your children on the spectrum or not. It's so important to look at the diet piece, everything that Dr. Grampiche was saying before, specifically with ADHD about artificial colors and flavors and pesticides. There have been
Yeah.
all kinds of studies that have shown that even a small amount of pesticide in a child's body will have a direct correlation to the amount of ADHD behavior they're engaging in. I've talked before about the artificial color thing. If you don't believe me, go to a birthday party and watch the kids eat the birthday cake that's got all the frosting with all the colors, and set your clock for implosion. And you will watch kids of all ages, all skill levels, on the spectrum, not on the spectrum, and they implode. And once you watch that once and you put those two things together, let me tell you, you will never go back.
That's true. That's true. And I'm so thank you so much, Shannon, for reminding me that the parent had written ADHD. I 100% agree with you. Diet plays a very critical role. It's sugar, and also generally tends to be food dye. But also, I would recommend that if your child has received a formal diagnosis of ADHD, I would recommend talking to a physician, whether it's a pediatrician or pharmacologist or a psychiatrist, about medications for ADHD. And these are, it's tough to take medication when our kids are young. But I just want to be honest with you guys and tell you, I've seen huge differences in some of our kids where as soon as they get on a medication, their activity level drops so significantly that they start to receive information better. Like, you have to remember that with ADHD, you're processing everything so fast that you miss a ton of stuff that's going on around you. You just miss it because imagine if you were on a train that was going by fast, right? You see certain things. You don't see everything because you're not there. You've already passed it. So slowing down is one of those things that really helps our kids just receive information better.
Wonderful. Thank you. Angel says, my 8-year-old is always hungry. She can eat 3 bowls of spaghetti. She also has an issue with heat. She can't stand being outside when too hot. What is this and what can I do?
Yeah, you need to get in touch with one of the physicians who is trained with biomedical issues pertaining to autism. I don't know where you are, Angel, maybe write into us and we'll try to help you connect with one of those folks. Or you can go on the website. What is MAPS website?
I think it's MAPS. I think it's actually MedMaps. But
MedMaps?
if you Google MedMaps autism, you'll find it.
Yeah, it's a website that an old friend of mine, Dan Rossignol, formed this group, and it's basically what used to be called the Dan Doctors, and it's much more now kind of based on science and training and so on. But these are folks, okay, so Tampa, you have David Berger, who's
I
one of the
love.
best
I
physicians out
love.
there. Yeah,
I'd like
please
to move to Tampa just to be near Dr. Berger.
honestly, he's fabulous. So please get in touch with Dr. David Berger. You can use my name, Shannon's name, as a reference, and he will help you. This is an issue with some of our kids, and their metabolism is very high. They have mitochondrial issues. You will need to talk to David, and he will be able to help with managing this, and it'll help a lot.
Yeah, I mean, like of all the places in the world that you could have written in where you were, like I felt like we all just won the lottery when you wrote in Tampa. I was like, oh my gosh, you
I
are
know.
the place where the person that I would most like to be for that kind of a thing, Angel. I'm so like I got goosebumps. It's meant to be. Have a great time. He's going to be able to help you. That's absolutely wonderful. I got to pivot for just a second, Dr. Grampy-Shea, because I promised. Last night, I was getting messages from a young man in Egypt who identified himself as being on the spectrum and being 20 years old. And he said, please, what help is there for me? I just can't deal with my own thoughts. And I was able to share just a couple of resources that, you know, are online for autism in Egypt. And apparently those are outdated and no longer there.
Yeah.
So for a young person in a place in the world where there aren't a lot of resources, is there anything that you can suggest to help deal with your own personal thoughts?
Yeah, so that actually concerns me, Shannon. My initial, and this is like, you know, my clinical training, my initial reaction is, are we sure the diagnosis is correct? So I would very much want to make sure of that as opposed to schizophrenia. Because when you are afraid or upset with your own thoughts, that is a little bit different than what we experience with autism. So please, maybe if this individual is listening, they can write into you, Shannon, and talk a little bit more about, give us a little bit more detail about what these thoughts are and why they are upset or, you know, frustrated with them, and then we can guide from there.
Okay. And then we had a long question that came in, and we get this question in a lot of different formats. So I'm going to kind of condense it down. But somebody who wrote in, who is an adult on the spectrum, this particular person is 41, but we've had many people write in their 20s and their 30s on the autism spectrum who are still struggling with their parents. That their parents, you know, it's sort of this topsy-turvy thing where their parents think that they can't do things for themselves, or the individual thinks that they can't do things for themselves. And this is a very much concern to me because I'm a parent, and I'm a parent of somebody who's about to be 18 in exactly 1 month from today. And I think all of us as parents want to do the best by our children, but when they're adults, it gets harder, is what I'm seeing, because we're in this mode where we've protected for so long. It's hard to know how not to do it again. So I wondered if you could give us all some advice here for the person who's on the spectrum, things to say to their parent to be able to move into a more adult relationship, and something to say to the parents so that we know how to back off. It's hard.
It's great. I love it. It's a good problem to have. So it really is. I mean, how wonderful is this? Because we are now in a situation where an individual on the spectrum will use ABA to shape the behavior of their parents. And I love that. So I'm going to help you with that. So let's discuss this exactly. Like, what is the behavior that you would like from your parent? It is for them to be less intrusive, I guess, of your choices. So why don't you write down the top 5 situations that you find to be intrusive? For example, When I want to go to school, my parents doesn't let me because they're worried I won't be able to find my way. Whatever it is, right? When I want to choose my classes, my parents intrudes because they think I'll make wrong choices. My parent doesn't let me drive because whatever it is, right? Write down those 5 and go and basically pick one that bothers you the most. Let's start there because we're going to shape your parent's behavior. And you will now go to your parent, and before that, you'll practice a speech. And you'll go to your parent and you'll say, when you do this, it makes me feel like I am not good enough. I'm not capable. I'm not able. So can we try something different? Can we try to next time, let me make a choice? And if it's a good choice, then from there on, you trust me, right? You trust me to succeed. And I just want to prove to you that you can trust me, right? You give them that talk and then see what happens. If the parent allows you next time to make your choice, then be very, very rewarding, right? So go give them a big hug, tell them how much you appreciate it. Make sure they understand that you're super, super happy because they allowed you to make your own choice. And if they don't allow you, go back and give the speech again. So just keep reminding them of the agreement. And perhaps in your discussion, when you're reminding them, they'll explain to you what their issues are, right? Because sometimes parents don't allow the choice because of their own fears, right? Or their own guilt. Like they might feel, oh my gosh, this is my job. If I don't make these choices, my child's going to fall off a cliff, right? So that's their own fear. And they can easily, you can talk to them about that. But the bottom line is you try to make a deal on one goal at a time. And if they allow you and it is successful, then you give them a lot of love for it. You reward them. Now, this won't always work. And if it doesn't work, honestly, you can also ask to go see a therapist, family therapist with your parent. And this is, people always think that marriage family counselors, LMFT, licensed marriage family counselors, are just for married couples. They're not. They're also for family. So you can also go see an LMFT or even a behavior analyst and say, this is something that I want to discuss with my parent and we're having a hard time communicating. And that clinician will help you set goals and work towards mutual goals. Make
What I
sense?
love about that, what I love about ABA, but the thing that we always miss is the reinforcer. You were saying, make sure that you're loving, make sure that you hug them. And I guarantee you, for people that are watching, if you get the parent to agree on something and then it goes well and you're able to do the thing that you wanted to do, if you turn around in that moment and say, Mom or Dad, thank you for being such a great parent. You helped me to be able to do this. Look at this. I can do this because you helped me.
Yeah.
I guarantee you there will be a shift because that's all we want.
Yeah.
That's all we want is for you to be safe, to do well, and for us to be good parents and have been meaningful to you. So if you give us that, we will let go of a lot of things.
But
It's
Shannon,
amazing.
sometimes it's also part of it is that the parent, I think, we as parents, we become trained to just do a certain amount. And then it's like when you stop doing those things, there's an emptiness, right? We refer to it as like emptiness. It's the same thing. It's like with kids on the spectrum, you end up doing more for a longer period of time. And then when they no longer need you to do that, it's a bigger hole. It's kind of like, what am I going to do with my own life now? So it's sort of like, the for parents out there, being able to kind of find activities that they can engage with is so important as well. But now that you brought up this the issue of adults, and I do notice that we have a lot of adults on our chat, which I love. I wanted to just throw out there, if there are any adults on the spectrum who are interested in learning more about how to have a relationship or how to date others. I've been asked, there's a program that might happen, and I've been asked to try to collect names of individuals who might be who have an interest in learning more about dating or learning more about how to establish relationships with someone else, just dating in particular. And if you know of an adult, or if you are an adult, I would really appreciate it if you could write into Shannon, and then Shannon will give me your information. And if that program actually does happen, I will probably be involved with it. And what it is like providing a lot of feedback and training and techniques and tips, and trying to help make you successful at that.
Which is an amazing, amazing thing. What an opportunity. So if you guys want to write into me, you can do that at s.penrod@autism-live.com. I have a fear that I'm going to be overrun with requests, but that's okay. That would be a good day. Okay. I also, we had a parent who wrote in and said, our son is 4, been diagnosed with ASD a year ago. We're currently living in a region where there's poor education. Both my husband and I remember how autistic kids were treated when we were in school, not that long ago and not that far away. We're afraid we won't be able to reach his highest potential. We've been talking about moving, but my parents are retired and take care of him while we work. They're fantastic. He has a great relationship with them. We're afraid of him losing his connection with drawing. They cannot afford to move with us. And they say, I know that everyone has a different case, and we have to decide this for ourselves, but what do you think? And they're saying that they're thinking of moving overseas. I don't know where the country is that they're starting moving overseas to. But it's that thing. I think a lot of people have to face a decision about, okay, my child on the autism spectrum needs something. I don't really see it where I am. If I leave here to go get it and I let go of our support group, isn't that going to hurt us more? And it's a tough, tough decision. What, because I've seen this happen many times and I've seen people make both choices. What are your thoughts on this, Dr.
And they're in the US, Shannon, right
Don't
now?
know that.
Okay.
I think that they are not in the US, but I don't know that for sure.
Yeah. So that is an important part of the criteria here in order to answer the question, because I would suggest that the support system is vital. Like, I just think that it is a critical part of doing this. And I would want to first try to help you find better intervention rather than move. And there's a big difference from country to country. So I kind of would like to have more information, I guess, before I can help advise you on that.
Okay. Wonderful. Okay, so Angel, who's so on it, has already looked up to see that Dr. Berger doesn't take her insurance and is more than a little expensive, which we should have warned you of. And so she's wanting to know, is there anyone else? I would just like to plug that there are, I see how much you're saying he is. And when I tell you he's worth it, because if you want to get the answers, he's the one who's going to have those answers. However, I understand not having the $240, but there are places that you can apply for grants, or you can do a fundraiser. That there are many people who even just do a fundraiser on Facebook and say, I'm doing a fundraiser for my child's health. Can I be honest and tell you that when we sent our child to a doctor like that the first time, we did a fundraiser. That is exactly what we did. We did a fundraiser and we raised the money because I couldn't afford the doctor or the tests.
Yeah. And I gotta tell you, Angel, it'll be more than just the initial 30 minutes, right? So you're gonna need more than 240. So I have two solutions. I mean, one is, first of all, the fact that a doctor doesn't take insurance doesn't mean that you cannot get insurance coverage. The way that it works is that you have to come up with the funds up front. So you would pay him the 240, and he then gives you a statement that you send to your insurance, and you will get back from the insurance whatever your coverage is. So 80% or whatever it is, instead of paying him, they'll pay you. And that is, everybody needs to know that your insurance does not just pay your doctor, they can also reimburse you, but it's a matter of coming up with the funds up front, and then you'll have it back in a month or maybe 2 months. Sometimes the insurance takes a while. The other option you have is to write in, I mean, for this $240 for 30 minutes, I'm going to fund that for you through my foundation, which is ACT, Autism Care Today. So please write in to Shannon and ask, give her your information, and we will connect with Dr. Berger if you want, and we'll get you your initial assessment or consultation, and I will send him the payment for that. So you can tell them that ACT, Autism Care Today, or Dr. Doreen is going to fund it, and I will fund that for you because I want to make sure you get that help. He's worth it.
Wow, you're amazing, Dr. Grandpichet. Lightning moment right there. Yes, OMG, you're an angel. That's amazing. Okay, I'm crying too, Angel. I'm right there with you. Because I know how big that is, and I know how much help that's going to give you. So that's really amazing, Dr. Grandpichet. How can you do that to us? You turned us all to waterworks.
No, this is what ACT does, Shannon. You know that.
I know.
And we want to help families, and and we'll end up funding more than that because I think you will need you'll need some lab tests and lab work. And I love doing that for families. That's all the fundraising we do, is to directly help families. So this is why we have that foundation. So please, you guys, if you have things like that, you got to write into us.
Okay. My 4-year-old son, ASD son, probably has visual stimming, looks at moving trees, light coming out of the windows. His language skills are improving. Please help on how to work on this.
Yeah.
And they say, thank you for previous advice you've given in over the weeks that they've been watching.
Oh, I'm glad. So visual self-stimulatory behavior is a hard one to get rid of. I would aim initially at not trying to completely eliminate it, but to reduce it to certain times. So first of all, moving trees, lights coming out of windows, etc., are going to be distracting. So make sure when he's learning stuff, when he's in therapy or whatever class, those things are not in his view. Okay, so, and I've had children where they're sitting next to the window in class, and the teacher's like, well, he's not paying attention, and the child is stimming on trees that are moving outside. So it's really important to make sure he's not placed in a position where when instruction is being given, he can be distracted by those types of things. And then what I would do is I would allow those activities at certain times of the day, and the rest of the day I would try to minimize it and allow him to just focus him. Now this is a short-term kind of solution. In the long term, there are developmental ophthalmologists who will do an evaluation and may come back and help you with things such as lenses that are shaped slightly differently, glass lenses that might be tinted, and eye exercises. We actually do some of these exercises like tracking or binocularity, being able to focus both eyes on one object, those types of things. So please make sure that you also, if you have the possibility of getting together with a developmental ophthalmologist, that is important.
Okay, I didn't realize how late it was, and I've gone over time. I apologize to Dr. Grandpichet. She has things she has to get to. But if you need to write to me, whether you're Angel or somebody else, because you're interested in dating skills, s.penrod@autism-live.com. Traven's got it up there for you on the screen, s.penrod@autism-live.com. I have to say, tomorrow, you guys, pivotal show. Dr. Stephen Shore is going to be with us for the first time live. He's amazing. He's the person that's credited with being the person who said, when you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. He's incredible. You're going to love him. I can't believe it's the first time we're having him live.
And can you
So,
please say
yes,
hello to him for me? He's a good
I
friend.
will. I will say hello to him. He is one of the most
I love
wonderful
him.
people. Everyone loves him. So he's on the show tomorrow live. You won't want to miss that. And then on Friday on the show, we're talking robots. And so we've got an amazing doctor here who's got a really cute robot that's doing things with autism. I can't wait. You know, I'm into the robots. So check that out. Until tomorrow, though, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Thank you, Dr. Grampichet, and thank you to all of you. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Good morning and welcome to Autism Live and to Ask Dr. Doreen. I'm Shannon Penrod, and look who our guest is. We have her with us live. Dr. Doreen Grampichet is here with us. She's going to be here with us for the next hour, talking to you guys, answering questions that you may have. I want to quickly tell you that there are many different ways to get your question asked. You can email, but the fastest way, if you're watching the live show right now, and if you're watching the live show, you might be watching on YouTube, on Twitter, on our homepage, or on Facebook. Our homepage, by the way, is autism-live.com, and you can be watching the show live there. The fastest way to get a question answered when we're live is to be on that YouTube, Twitter, or Facebook, and just be on that platform and send in the question. It shows up in real time. If you're watching, say hi, and I'll shout out, and you can see how fast that is. Look, Parker said good afternoon. So that's how fast it is, Parker. Good afternoon to you too. We also want to let you know that we're live on a bunch of other sites, and we podcast. Any place that you go to get your podcast, we are a free download. We are very proud of the fact that you guys have made us the #1 ranked autism podcast worldwide. So excited to be that, and we are that because you guys liked us and shared us and told friends about us, and you subscribed and you reviewed on iTunes. So Traven is showing you some of the myriads of ways that you can watch the show either live and in podcast, and we hope that you guys will. I'm so happy. Good morning. We're so glad to have you here, because I think we're going to get to a question of yours in just a second. It's at the top of my list. So thrilled that you are here. And I mentioned that we have Dr. Grampichet with us. She is, I believe, not just a true expert in the field of autism, I believe the preeminent expert in our time. And so it's always a thrill to have her here with us. She's been working in this field for how many years? I know it's like a thing, and I should let go of it because I'm the one that's always trying to protect you, because no one would guess that you have been on the planet as many years as you've been practicing. So, because you've been, correct me, like it doesn't want to stick in my brain. It's more than 40 years now you've been practicing in this field. That's just crazy. That's nuts. That's crazy.
42, going on 43.
Well, again, and everybody hears that and goes, what skin cream are you using? Right? That's where we go to. But the really important thing is that she is a true expert in this field and has gone through a lot of changes in this field and has talked with and helped people all across the spectrum and their families. We're talking about very young children all the way up through senior citizens, supporting them, seeing them as whole people. In fact, we should say what you're doing this weekend, because I think it's pretty incredible. Are you willing to talk about what you're doing this weekend?
Absolutely. And good morning, everyone. It's so good to be back. We've been traveling for a little bit and haven't had the show for a while. This weekend, of course, is the ABAI International Conference. That stands for the Association for Behavior Analysis International Conference. And this is a very important conference for ABA, and it has many thousands of attendees who are mostly BCBAs, or board certified behavior analysts, but there are also a lot of parents, families attend, teachers, practitioners, all different individuals who are involved with autism in one way or another. This particular conference is not just about autism. The association does have another conference that is only about autism, but this one is about all different forms of ABA. And this weekend, CARD, the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, is being honored for its many, many years of having provided service to families across the world. And I am, on behalf of CARD and myself, receiving that honor at the opening ceremony of the conference. So that's one very wonderful part of this conference. And Shannon, another very, very exciting thing for me, which I think is just is something that just came about sometime last year, and it was like a wonderful thing that happened, was that, you know, I decided I was about to retire. This is sort of the beginning of COVID, and I was trying to retire at that point, and I had saved some money, and I decided to donate it to this association, the Association for Behavior Analysis. And they formed an endowment in my name. So it's the Doreen Grand-Pichet Fund. And this fund will now every year pay for a physician, a doctor, a medical doctor, to present at the ABAI International Conference, so that behavior analysts can learn more about the medical side of autism. And this is something I'm very, very passionate about, because a lot of behavior analysts don't, you know, they forget perhaps, or that autism, you know, that the child is a whole human being, and we have to worry about their biology and their medical situation, and we have to make sure the child is feeling well and doesn't have gastrointestinal problems, or is, you know, deal with their sleep issues and anxiety and all the medical and mental sort of other issues that are ongoing. And that dealing with those and helping the family through those actually improves the ABA that we do. It accelerates what we do with ABA. So I'm a really strong believer of multidisciplinary treatment. And I'm just thrilled, because this is the first year. Every single year now there will be a speaker, and the fees for the speaker, essentially the honorarium and so on, and the travel costs and so on, will be paid by my endowment, so that now ABAI will begin to train behavior analysts on medical issues pertaining to autism. And I'm very excited, because this year, the first year, we have Dr. Richard Fry, MD, PhD, who is an incredible scientist and physician, and he is doing the very first talk, and he's going to be training BCBAs on the complexities of the medical issues in autism. So it's
What
very
an amazing thing.
Yeah.
It's industry changing. One of the things that I cite all the time as one of the many reasons why I think you're the preeminent expert in the field of autism is that you've been doing this for decades and looking at individuals as individuals, whole beings, as you said. And that isn't, you know, and I don't want to make it sound like I'm disparaging the field of behavior analysts at all, because not at all. I'm a huge fan of them. But some people tend to be like, well, you know, my expertise is this, and I'm going to stay in my lane. And when you're a caregiver, when you're a parent, and you're trying to put together a team, and your child is, you know, bending over, sticking both fists into their stomach and crying when it's time for them to do ABA, it's really, I think it's so beneficial when you have somebody who is willing to work with you and with your medical staff to the greater good for that child or that individual. So I applaud you for being the pioneer in this, and for putting your dollars where your heart and your brains are, so that other people will benefit from it.
Thank you so much, Shannon. Yeah, I just think that, you know, if you think of ourselves, right? And I always give this example to parents, that if you don't sleep, like you and I, neither one of us slept last night. So if you don't sleep one night, how are you functioning the next day, right? You might be okay in the beginning of the day, but let me tell you, by 2 or 3 o'clock today, I will be a zombie, right? And so imagine that that goes on with our kids. It goes on with many, many, many of our kids. They have sleep issues. And meanwhile, we're trying to pound them with knowledge, with ABA or with school or whatever it is. And it is so difficult for our kids. And logically, obviously, if we can help our kids sleep better, they're going to function better during the day and learn better. And a lot of times when you look at sleep, there's other things that are underlying as well. As you know, a lot of our kids have reactions to various foods and allergens in their environment. On the other hand, our kids are also hypersensitive, so many of our kids have issues with waking up from sound, etc. It's all the biological stuff. You have to, we as behavior analysts, we have to learn at least enough to work with physicians so that we can basically communicate with them, understand what's going on, and so on.
Can I do a short plug for something that you turned me on to that we laugh about here at the house? And this is for adults. For those of you who are adults, whether you're on the spectrum watching or you're not on the spectrum, but you have somebody that you love on the spectrum and you're struggling with sleep, been there, done that. It's a conversation that Dr. Grant Pichet and I talk about a lot. And I had mentioned to you, I don't know, like 6 months ago that I broke down and bought the paid version of Calm. Because they have sleep stories on there and they were helping me. And there was free ones on there. You don't have to buy the version, but there are free ones on there. And there's some like crazy ones where you're trying to listen to what the story is, but you can't hang on to the thread of it and you go to sleep. And man, I sleep really hard when I do it. But then I bought the version and you said to me, oh, Shannon, you've got to check out the McConaughey.
Yeah.
and I have been doing the McConaughey ever since. I don't even bother with any of the other things. I play the McConaughey thing and Matthew McConaughey tells a story. And it's the big joke because I don't make it more than 2 sentences in. I'm an insomniac. And he says, well, hello there. It's Matthew McConaughey. And I'm like, and to the point where I'm not going to be able to see a movie with him, that it's automatic.
I hear you.
And my whole family laughs about, we just talk about the McConaughey factor now, but I'm asking everyone, if you seriously are like, oh, I'm so underslept and I can't, like my kid wakes up and then I can't go back to sleep and you don't know what to do. I'm asking you to just try it. It's the Calm app. It's the McConaughey thing. Dr. Grant Pichet told me it is some serious stuff. McConaughey factor. Jem did it last night for the first time after we watched the eclipse and was out. I said to him, try to see if you can hang on to hear what the thread of the story is. I'm telling you that. I'm going to write him a letter. I'm going to write Matthew McConaughey a letter. Because nothing has ever made me go to sleep like Matthew McConaughey. I don't think that's what he wants to hear, but it's true. Okay. So we're going to jump in here. But again, I said that if people wrote in, I was going to shout out. So I'm saying good morning to Love Life, to Dell, to Christina, and Bert, saying hello to Bert. And I already said hello to Parker and So I want to get to a question. And of course, when I did that, I just moved things around. But somebody wrote in a question. Yes, go ahead. You wanted to say something?
Dell, people are asking where the conference is, and the conference was virtual. It's a virtual conference. So if you go on the Association for Behavior Analysis International, you can Google that, or you can also Google ABAI, and you'll see all the information.
Okay, super duper cool. So we had a question that came in while you were away asking, are there any parts of skills, I don't have the exact wording here, but I know what basically they said, any parts of skills that deals with cognition, but not in the cognition curriculum? And if that sounds like a weird thing, let me clarify why. That they, every time they talk about cognition with their supervisor, the supervisor is saying that that's academic and that insurance funding won't fund anything that's academic. So can you shed a little light on the difference between things that are cognitive and academic and the things that are cognitive and aren't academic and where they would find them in skills?
Yes, absolutely. So there's an entire section, there's a domain in skills called cognition. And the majority of the stuff, I'm just trying to go through it in my head, but there's hundreds of things in there. I don't think any of it is academic. There's another domain that's called academic. So I would not, if your supervisor is telling you that they can't do portions of cognition, we have an issue here. So you should then escalate that. And you're always welcome to go through Shannon and contact Shannon, and she will let our clinical director, Evelyn Kung, know. And then Evelyn will reach out to your supervisor and walk them through the cognition curriculum and help them understand kind of what's going on there. I'm assuming you're with CARD. And bottom line is, yes, that is correct. Insurance does not allow us to delve into the academic curriculum, but the cognition curriculum has nothing really to do with academic. The entire curriculum was built on the premise of that individuals on the spectrum have a hard time with perspective taking. What that means is that they have a very difficult time separating their own mind from the mind of others, and therefore they only are able to see the world from their own perspective. Now, it sounds like not a big deal, but it's a huge deal because it affects a lot of different functions in life. If you can't see things from another person's perspective, you're going to be intrusive. You're going to be perceived as being self-centered. You will not be able to show a lot of empathy or sympathy. You will not be able to kind of understand why people are interested in other things. You won't be able to understand where their information and beliefs come from. A million things. You won't be able to tell jokes because you'll think they already know what's in your head. It's a million things. So that whole curriculum works on teaching the child or the adult all the things that are affected by having a difficulty in perspective taking. And so these are things like teaching the individual to take someone else's perspective from a sensory perspective. How does the other person see the world? What do they hear? How does that affect their knowledge? Those types of things. And then it goes on to teaching our individual kind of how to take the other person's perspective and apply it to real life situations so that, like, the next time they disagree with someone, it's okay because people can have different beliefs. It's not all black and white. All sorts of challenging behaviors are handled once the person understands someone else's perspective. I mean, if you think about it, Shannon, it's one of those skills that helps us. I mean, the better we are with seeing things from someone else's perspective, the better we are socially.
In fact, I want to reference that because I see a lot of times that parents and caregivers, we're seeing things from one perspective, and we see our kids as whole, and we want help for our children for everything. And then the school district is saying, well, we're going to help you with the things that have to do with school.
Yes.
And somebody else says, well, we're going to help you with the things that your insurance says that we can help you with. And it's all these different perspectives. But what I want to say to caregivers in particular and to folks on the spectrum is that sometimes when we ask somebody a question and we ask it what I call tightly, that, so you say, what can I do about my child behaving this way in school? I find that in this generation of people, we get a tight answer. They'll say, oh, I can't help you with what happens in school sometimes. And I'm taking it to the most exaggerated form that it could be. And they just answer the question that you just asked instead of asking the bigger question of what's the behavior that you're seeing and are you seeing it at home too? And so I want to encourage parents and caregivers always to, ask the question tightly, but then ask it broadly and keep asking until you get to the answer. As Dr. Granpeesheh said, though, if you're a CARD family and you're having these kinds of issues, talk to me and I'll tell you what words to use so that you get your point across, right? And that you don't get stopped by something because somebody was actually answering your question correctly, but they weren't looking at what the bigger question was maybe that you were asking. Because most of the time, insurance won't fund things that the goal is educational or something that happens in the classroom. And insurance gets really testy with ABA providers. And so ABA providers are very concerned about following the letter of what is funded. But there's a lot of middle ground.
Oh yeah, but it's very tough dealing with payers. I mean, like, thank you for bringing that up. I want the families to know, like, they will actually retract payment for anything that is considered academic. So there's a lot of, that's why the supervisor is being very cautious.
Yeah. But, usually if there's something happening in the classroom, it has like far-reaching effects into other things that that an insurance company would fund. And sometimes it's just a matter of finding how we word it so that everybody goes, oh, that's what we're doing here, and that's okay. And it reverse engineers the other way too. I hear schools all the time saying, oh, well, we're not dealing with that because it's not technically educational. And then we have to go back to IDEA and say to them, no, you're also responsible for this person when they leave school, and get them to go, oh, right, no, okay, I see where you're going with that. We can fund that, everybody gets a little narrow. Okay. I love it when we have adults that ask questions or ask questions on behalf of adults. And so this is a great one that I want to talk about. That they want to know, with all the things going on in the world right now, there's a lot of scary events. How can people on the spectrum handle them and not get scared? And for those of you who are on the spectrum, I think this will be interesting to you. But for those of us who have people that we love on the spectrum, knowing how to support them when scary things happen is a really useful task.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I have to say that, I mean, I'm not going to have a great answer for this, because I think that everyone experiences a certain level of fear when things happen in the world. I mean, this morning, early in the morning, as I was just turning on the TV to start my workout, I heard about the shooting that just occurred in San Jose, California. It's another mass shooting. And these are the things that are extremely scary. And there's no question that, whether you're an adult on the spectrum or just an adult or a teen or a child, or, we're going to have different levels of fear about this. And I think when you have fear, all you can do is hope that those around you give you support. I mean, there's two. One is that with the passage of time, we forget about most of these things, right? We've had horrible shootings in the past, and if the fear has now dissipated, right? There was a time a couple of years ago when it was almost every week there was something horrible going on. I guess that is, I guess if you look at it from the perspective of, did COVID produce any positive results? That's one of them, right? We were all home, so these types of horrible things were less. Unfortunately, it is very true that now that we're going back to regular life, a few things are going to come back that were not so pleasant. One of those is these horrible things that happen. And all we can do is just give each other support and tell each other that it's, there are those who are dealing with it. This will not always be the case. Just try to be cautious to all the things that, for instance, don't go into unsafe locations, although most of these mass shootings are unpredictable and you can't really do anything about it. But honestly, and I appreciate Parker writing all of this here, and he's written a few other really good comments for us this morning as well. But I just want to let you know, it kind of shakes us all up the same. We all kind of get really tight about these things. And I think for me personally, and Shannon, you can also maybe address this, but for me, I think I just have a very strong faith in sort of God and the universe. And I try to calm myself by saying, we will get through this too, first of all. And secondly, I have a very strong belief that the universe is the way it's supposed to be. Things are the way they are, and that is perfect. And so when bad things happen, I just let them happen, because it's part of what is intended for all of us to experience and learn from. And it's just really sad. It's very, very sad. And my heart goes out to all those families who are suffering today.
Yes, I did not know. I was in other meetings this morning, so I did not know. That's horrifying. I just want to add to that I'm an adult who was diagnosed with a panic disorder because I was having panic attacks. And I talk about it, on the show. I never want to, talk about it endlessly, but I got to a point where I was having great trouble leaving my home, and in many cases couldn't leave my home. If I stepped outside, I had to come back in. And I the help that I got for that, because I'm somebody who is very reactive to medication. I'm not a good person. Taking a Tylenol is like a whole big thing for me because I have allergic reactions to so many things. So I went to doctors and said, what can I do? Because I was feeling very overwhelmed. And by the way, this was at a period of time where my son had been diagnosed with autism and we were facing a lot. And I was having a hard time with everything, with literally everything. And doctors wanted to prescribe Valium or something that would numb me out. And then friends were saying, have a drink. It'll all be better if you have a drink. And I was like, wow, I have to be able to be there for my kid. I can't tune him out. He's full time 24/7. So I didn't see how any of these solutions worked. But finally, somebody told me cognitive behavioral therapy,
Mhm.
and I did cognitive behavioral therapy, and it helped me, and it still helps me. That it's a whole way of thinking my way through my thoughts, so
Yeah.
that when I start, I now can sense. It's funny, we had Alex Plank on the show on Friday, Dr. Grant Pichet, and he has an assistance dog that is trained to notice his heart rate and
Yes.
when he's perspiring. And he said, sometimes I feel like I'm okay and everything is fine, and the dog will say, give the signal, you're starting to escalate. and that
Amazing.
and that he in the past thought, I think the dog is wrong, but then would always find out that the dog is never wrong, that he
Yeah.
was starting to escalate, and that it helps him to stop. Now, I was trained for myself without a dog to notice the signs, and what to do at every point along the way. So if I'm activated at a 2, there are things I can do to get myself to a 1. If I missed it and I'm at a 4, to get myself to a 2. And if I'm at a 10, what are the things that I need to do to get myself, and I've not shared this on the show, but I went and got my vaccine. And because I'm somebody who has anaphylaxis and
Hmm.
has passed out and had to be resuscitated, like, it was a big deal for me to go and get the shot. I was worried I would have an allergic reaction, had to talk it through with my doctor. And when I was there for the second shot the other day, boy, I was really activated. And what did I do? I put my headphones in and I McConaughey.
Oh, great.
And I was fine because that's a thing that makes me relax, right? So I think, finding the things that work for you and the thought process that works for you, and helping the person in your life who, because my poor husband, who's been around me when I start to have a panic attack, had to learn some things to do, like not to bombard me with questions while I'm having a panic attack, or escalating, but to give me some space. But that's me. Everybody's a little bit different. But I think that's really helpful. And I know you've recommended cognitive behavioral therapy before, Dr. Grant
Yeah.
Pichet, but
Yes.
but it's not right for everyone, correct?
No, I mean, people depend on different things, and we have different things that work for us. Some people are going to actually choose medication over therapy, which is totally fine as well. You basically find what works for you and you go that way, right? So you can be dealing with CBT, cognitive behavior therapy. You can have medications like Valium, Xanax. There are many other medications that help with this. You can go through behavioral therapy where you are working on reducing your panic attacks or your anxiety, definitely. I mean, there's a lot of different, you could just see a psychologist on an ongoing basis and talk about your issues and, look at where what the background is and what's causing them and so on. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do. And absolutely, Shannon, forgive me to the audience for not bringing that up, but certainly if you're feeling to the point where you have anxieties or issues around anything that's going on, definitely therapy of some type, or even psychiatric treatment, which is medication, is definitely the way to go.
There we go. So I hope some of that is of help to somebody out there. I'm saying hello to a whole bunch of people. Miranda and Nava. So thrilled that you're here with us, Nava. And Nazra. I'm loving these names. Samra Wheat. So glad that you're here. Lucy. We're going to get to as many of these questions as we can. I want to go to a question about funding, that somebody got a diagnosis. My child was diagnosed with ASD, but the insurance denied ABA after doing the ADOS. I certainly want to know, where are you located? Which state are you in? Are you in the United States?
The ADOS is a diagnostic tool. It's the Autism Diagnostic Observation Schedule. So that if they denied ABA after ADOS, the only reason I can think of is that your child did not qualify for a diagnosis of autism. So that is where you need to go. You need to get the results of the ADOS from whomever gave it to your child. And if it actually says that your child does not have a diagnosis of autism, the ADOS does not indicate it, and you disagree with that, then I would go see someone else who's a diagnostician and start that way. It's not, if your insurance is rejecting it based on some other thing, I can't imagine what that would be. The ADOS is only intended for diagnosis.
We are seeing some weird things happening though right now with insurance, where people are getting denied, and it's not a legal denial. Yeah. And want to encourage everybody and empower them to know that you can appeal decisions made by your insurance, and that often, depending on what your insurance is, your first appeal is sort of perfunctory. It doesn't do anything, and often as caregivers, we don't know this. So we put in the denial. We take the time to sit down and put in the denial. And by the way, they have to give you the denial in writing. And that denial in writing has to have instructions of how you can fight the denial. So make sure you get it in writing. But then we find that a lot of caregivers will do that. They'll put in the appeal. They get denied on the first denial and they think, well, this is hopeless, but it isn't. The asterisk is that on the second denial, there's a thing that says, here's how to appeal that. And that's the good process. That's the one that's the most useful. Yeah. And that we find that a lot of people have a lot of success with appealing, but you have to do it to the second denial. I could go into all the reasons why, but I think it would just bore everybody. But just know you usually have to do two.
And don't let go. I mean, this is part of the game with insurance companies, is that they know that parents are so busy doing other things and taking care of their child. Don't let it go. I saw, I think, another comment from the same parent saying that they offered speech therapy. That's great, but speech therapy is not enough. And they know that. And they know that ABA is authorized should your child have a diagnosis of autism. So appeal it and keep going.
Absolutely. Especially if you're in the United States, if it's actual insurance, if it's not self-funded insurance, that's a different thing. Then I think you'll find that you'll be successful. And if you have more specific questions about that, you can write to me specifically and I can have a conversation with you about it. s.penrod@autism-live.com. Because I'll tell you something, too many people fought too hard for us to get insurance funding for us to roll over and let them say you're not covered when you are. We're getting a neurological development. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
There's just so many questions. We should try to go through them fast. I worry about these questions.
Okay. We're getting neurological development evaluation. What does something like that entail?
Oh, okay. So they're going to do some physical tests and some tests that resemble IQ tests. So a lot of the testing for neurological issues is similar to like the type of test where, for instance, they'll put a block in front of your child and another series of pieces of a block and ask the child to try to produce the pattern that's on this block. or they will draw something and have the child try to copy it, or they will say numbers and see how many numbers your child can repeat forward or backward. There's those types of activities, and that kind of will be able to tell them more about all different functioning of the mind. Don't be afraid of it. It is it's really good. It's a good thing to have neurological testing. It tells you a lot about how your child is thinking.
And good for you for getting it done. Hi, have you had any experience with kiddos taking Namenda? His biomed doctor wants to put my son on Namenda to help with symptoms, especially hyperactivity. My son laughs excessively. It's an escape behavior. He also laughs excessively when he's nervous. I know it's not yeast. We've tested him for yeast and they said it's exhausting. We're sending you a hug.
Yeah, it is. I'm sending you a hug. But okay, so a couple of quick answers to that. One is that you mentioned that it's an escape function, so that would indicate that he is specifically laughing in order to get out of situations. And so let's deal with each of these one by one. When he laughs, do not let him get rid of the situation. Do not allow him to delay something. Continue working with him and ignore the laugh. You also mentioned that he also laughs when he's anxious. That's a completely different function. So let's make sure we can do whatever we can to reduce his anxiety. Sometimes it's just something as basic as allowing him to hold on to his favorite stuffed animal, or increasing reinforcers in his environment. Or, does he have other things that could lead to anxiety? Like, is he sleeping okay or not? So let's make sure we deal with the anxiety. That's probably important for the physician to deal with. Now, Namenda is usually a medication that's given for dementia patients, right? And it's supposed to clear up cognitive activity. It's supposed to increase your cognitive activity and make you just kind of a little bit more clear in your thinking. It does have some side effects. One of the side effects is it makes you tired. And I don't know if the physician is trying to use it in order to balance out the hyperactivity. I'm not sure, but Namenda has other side effects too. For instance, a lot of people have nausea from Namenda or dizziness. So I'm not sure that I would go to Namenda as a solution for ADHD hyperactivity. I'd want to know a lot more about the hyperactivity. Is it the hyperactive type of ADHD, or is it just is he just distractible, and does he have issues with inhibition? What's the overall profile? There's different types of ADHD. And then there's other medications. If you even want to try other medications, maybe you've already tried them. Namenda would probably be something that happens after you've tried the standard medications for ADHD. Hopefully that helps.
Yes. Long question here that I'm mostly going to refer to tomorrow, because we have Bonnie Yates, special education attorney, on the show tomorrow live taking questions. So somebody wrote in and said, how do I make sure a school district removes a special needs teacher and aides and replaces them with someone who is educated and doesn't abuse our kids? And they want to know about how do we get cameras in the classroom. I'm sending you a hug because it sounds terrible. I see on here that you have a lawyer, but I'd love for you to talk to Bonnie Yates tomorrow about this very issue. There's a lot that needs to happen for school reform. Anything you want to add to that, Dr. Granpeesheh?
No, I mean, wherever possible, if you can, write down what's going on, record where you can, have people go in and observe where you can. The more proof you have, the better. I'm very sorry you're going through this. It's very disappointing because we put our children in the hands of teachers, and to have something like this happen is just shattering.
Absolutely. I'm glad you have a lawyer, though, because a lot of times that's what it takes. Where do we find out about the therapy that Shannon used? I use CBD oil and it helps me a lot. I don't do RX medicines. And they're a different parent than before. They went on to say that their insurance denied ABA or anything for autism. And they're the ones who were told that speech therapy, but then they didn't pay for it. So I'm a little horrified by that. But do you want to tell them about where you'd find it's cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT instead of CBD,
Yeah.
which is the
Go
other
for
thing.
it.
Right.
So you can, psychologists have different areas of specialty. Some psychologists are behavioral psychologists, others are family systems, some are psychodynamic and they follow Freud theory. There's lots of different types of psychologists. You can find a psychologist by asking your health insurance for referrals or a list of psychologists on their website. And then each of those psychologists will generally have a bio that says, my area of specialty or the way I practice is blah, blah, blah. And so you're looking for CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. It's similar to behavior therapy, but it is a little different in the sense that they give you exercises and activities that go in, like, that require you to practice and in your mind, and they change the way you think about certain things that are happening to you. And it's extremely effective. I do want to tell everyone, and I appreciate a lot of people like Shannon don't want to try medication, and that's perfectly, absolutely fine. And CBT is very effective on its own. Medications are also effective on their own. The combination of the two has always been shown to be the most effective when one or the other doesn't work. Now, CBD oil is also something that a lot of people use for anxiety, and for panic attacks and even for pain. And I don't know a lot about that. I don't have experience with that, or I don't have a lot of, I think it's mainly because it's too soon. But it certainly has been proven to be effective for a lot of people. So yes, absolutely. I mean, as I said, Shannon, we all have to find what helps us.
I want to shout out. We had somebody wrote in and said, "Hi Doreen, I love your passion and your company. You've been so inspirational." And they later went on to write that they are a proud mama of a card employee, and I don't know if you can see who they said it is. Somebody that I adore,
Oh,
and
actually,
uh,
yeah, that's awesome. Thank
somebody
you for
that
joining us.
I adore your daughter so much that I'm the one who had Joe Montaigne do a personal message to her, Doreen,
That's
because
amazing.
when Joe Montaigne was on the show, and we always have a meet and greet whenever we have a celebrity on the show when we weren't in COVID, and people could come and say hello. And Ashley, the wonderful Ashley, she was in a meeting and she wanted to meet Joe Montaigne in the worst way. And I was going to the opening of a show that night that Joe Montaigne was at. And I was like, could you just do a shout out to Ashley? And he's such a good sport. He did a whole thing about Ashley, where were you? And it was
That's
hilarious.
awesome.
So I hope that mom has seen it.
I also
Sorry.
want to say I love Ashley as well. She's an incredible person. Thank you. Thank you, first of all, for your kind words, but thank you for giving us such a capable and wonderful, kind and incredible person to manage all of our. For many years, Shannon, she managed the training for all of our.
Yeah. OMs. Oh, we lost Dr. Grampiche. Or we lost me. I'm not sure which one. She's frozen. I hope you guys can still see me. I'm going to keep talking. Hopefully we'll get Dr. Grampiche back. Hopefully, maybe it's better if it's her that you have instead of me. I don't know. I want to go back to a question that we had from Dell about not getting the insurance not funding you. But that the school is not being helpful, and that they're not helping your child with licking his hands. So Dr. Grampiche is back.
I'm back on my cell phone because we suddenly lost electricity.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Well, that'll do it. So the person who wrote in and said that insurance would not take the diagnosis and school's not being helpful. He says that they're having a problem with his child licking his hands.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you have some suggestions?
Well, I mean, it's licking your hands. It's very hard to find the function of that. If you are working with a behavior analyst, I do recommend that you try to figure out why he's licking his hands. But in the meantime, I mean, a lot of children that I've worked with in the past who did lick their hands, if I could determine that it had just basically become a habit and we couldn't identify what was leading to it, sometimes you can. Sometimes, Shannon, it has to do with just, you know, something on the hand that's bothering the individual and so on. But if you can't, I guess the best thing to do is, there are, even at like any drugstore, you can find these, I forget what, no bite, I think it's called, which is for little kids who bite their fingers, their fingernails, or for little, very young children who suck their thumbs. And it's pretty harmless, and you can put it on the hand, and it has like a sour type of taste. And that will, you know, convince your child very quickly that it's not a fun thing to lick the hands.
Yeah, doesn't taste good. Incredible. So I want to flip to a question that we had that came in last week while you weren't here, Dr. Granpeesheh. And it was somebody who wrote in and identified themselves as being a caregiver, and that their spouse is a mental health care provider. There was a video that we ran that you were talking about the differences between ASD and other diagnoses like ADHD, and how there are gradations of things. And they were very excited and said that they want to be watching more videos, but they wanted you to take a second and say what your credentials are.
Oh.
And where, you know, research that you might have been involved is, because they said we want to know who our experts are. And I thought we should answer this, because we don't discuss this enough.
No, of course. Yeah. So I am a PhD psychologist. I'm a licensed psychologist in many, many states. I can't name them all. So I've been relicensed at least 10 times. I'm also a board certified behavior analyst, doctoral level, so a BCBA-D. I studied psychology at UCLA. I have all of my degrees, my bachelor's, master's, and my doctoral, and my internships pre and post, all at UCLA Hospital, UCLA Department of Psych, and so on. And I have been working in the world of autism specifically since 1978-9. And so that's where we're at almost 43 years. And I have been diagnosing not just autism, but children in general. My practice is all about children. I've been diagnosing children since 1992. So however many years that is. And so that, and of course, I've published a lot of publications. I'm not sure how many. I wouldn't be able to name them. There's more than I can count. Yeah, there's too many. And they're on, mostly they have to do with autism, but there are many on, you know, diagnostic symptoms of various disorders. There are all different. I have many that are medical articles, many in medical journals as well. So yeah, I think you can kind of look up my publications if you're interested.
Absolutely. And I encourage you to do that. And I love the fact that you're being discerning about where you take advice. And I love that they said, we're, you know, out of an abundance of caution, because there are people all over the internet, myself included, who, you know, I don't have a degree in autism. And so I always, usually when you're not here, Dr. Granpeesheh, I start the show and I say, we have lots of experts on the show. I'm not one of them. But I also say that, you know, I'm caregiver to caregiver. It's not that I don't know anything, happy to give it an opinion, but that people take it that way, and that it's different, an opinion versus an expert opinion. It's a vastly different thing.
Yeah.
Okay. We've got somebody who, we actually have a couple of people who have written in and urgently want to know your thoughts on the current COVID vaccination, and giving that to the people are concerned about giving it to their children on the autism spectrum.
Yeah.
And
great
you
question.
know,
Great question.
It is a great question, and I know there's a lot of concern around this. Yeah.
Let's talk about this. So, I am a strong believer that we don't, just with everything, not just with autism, but with everything, you cannot, you can't overgeneralize, right? You have to really ask yourself the questions and go into detail. So let's ask ourselves the questions of why have, historically, why has there been a fear about vaccines in the world of autism to begin with? What is that all about? And the research that led to all of that was in two different formats. One was research that was published that showed that the DTaP or the DPT vaccines, the diphtheria, pertussis, tetanus vaccine series, used to be bound together. It had a binding agent that was thimerosal. And thimerosal was, I'm going to join you, Shannon, from my computer.
Okay.
Okay,
There
that's
we go.
this
You're back. The electricity must be back on.
Yeah, the electricity just came back on, and I thought I should just join you here. So,
Okay,
so thimerosal was mercury, and it was causing our kids toxicity levels that were not acceptable. So a lot of families then basically reacted to that and stopped taking the DTaP vaccine. Further, the flu vaccine as well has a massive amount of thimerosal. In fact, later, I don't remember the year now, I think it would have been like 2007 or something, the binding agent was changed, but it caused a significant reaction in the world of autism. After that, there was also research that showed that a lot of children developed very severe gastrointestinal inflammation after having received the MMR vaccine. It was a completely different thing. It had nothing to do with the mercury issue, but it had to do with the inflammation of the gut. And it went back and forth, and there's a massive amount of controversy around it. But I can tell you that realistically, the research shows that there is a lot of gastrointestinal inflammation occurring in children. And it's not just about the MMR vaccine per se. It's a fact that with our children, they are immunocompromised, which basically means that their immune system is not functioning the way that it does in us. And a lot of that actually has to do with their redox capability, their ability to detoxify from various toxins. And that is a fact. In fact, it's getting so bad in our environment, Shannon, that almost everyone has some sort of GI issue now and a gastrointestinal issue now. And a lot of these issues are just because the toxicity level has gotten so high in our food and the use of plastics and the air, and our food is probably the biggest source, water, etc., that we are no longer able to detoxify. And so that is absolutely something that is of concern with our kids, because they are, they're have a harder time with vaccines. The way that traditional vaccines work is that they're giving you a very, very minuscule amount of the disease, and your immune system is supposed to react and eventually and basically put up a wall against that disease, because your immune system now has a tiny taste of it and is now going to crush it and now become so strong that that disease or that virus or whatever it is will not attack you anymore. Now, the current vaccine, the COVID vaccine, is completely different theoretically, right? The way that it was made has absolutely nothing to do with giving you a small particle of the disease at all. It's not that. It is made by a messenger RNA. The vaccine, it changes your genetic composition. So what it does is they're giving instructions. Think of it as a message. It's not, it is not a little bit of COVID so that your body reacts to it. Not at all. It is a message that is being given to your genes, your genetic structure, and your genetic structure then the message is, hey, there's a virus out there. We want you to start protecting my body against it. And then your genetic information and it reacts and then produces the antibodies that would normally be in place had you been exposed to COVID. So this is a little different. They're not exposing you to the virus. They're actually giving a message to your immune system to react before it has ever been exposed. So we've never had a virus like a vaccine like this before. Whether or not it doesn't follow the rules of past vaccines and our concerns. It doesn't have toxic metals in it or mercury. It doesn't have that kind of a fear that would potentially cause inflammation in the gut, as in the measles vaccine, etc. So it doesn't follow those rules anymore. So one would say, maybe I shouldn't be too concerned about it because it's not within the same category. Having said that, it's brand new. We don't know. There hasn't been enough time to study this and to figure out, will it cause any kind of problem, not just in kids who are immunocompromised, but in general. We don't know enough about this thing, right? Now we're reading that, for instance, it might be causing heart problems in people who received the Moderna vaccine who are of a certain age. Things will come out about these vaccines. We will learn. They will make them better. I guess if I had children on the spectrum right now, I would probably wait because that's just my personal, and I think this is a decision that each parent has to make. First of all, we don't really have a vaccine that's appropriate for children yet. It hasn't been approved yet. I think Pfizer goes down to age 12, if I'm not wrong, but below that, we don't have anything. So let's wait and see what comes. And let's keep reading and learning about the science.
Yeah. And I, since I disclosed that I got my shot, I feel that it's only fair that I disclose that my son, who's turning 18 next week, also got his shot. And I'll keep you posted, but he was fine. And my son has had autoimmune issues in the past. And it was a long process that I had to go through, and that I talked to a lot of people about it. And I talked, because he's turning 18, I also talked to him about it, and made a determination based on a lot of different factors. It was not a light decision, but it was a decision that we made. And so I want to be open about that we did make the decision, and he made the decision, and he has now had both of his shots, Pfizer. So I'll keep you guys posted on how all of that goes. Okay. So
there was a question, if I remember, I don't remember what it was now, but I think there was someone was asking about a genetic disorder, or saying that their child has, I don't remember what it was, because
it is the same. Yeah, it is the same person who was saying that they would like cameras in the school, and that they're finding out that, and they would like to have different people in the school, and they've hired lawyers. And the genetic disorder, I'm going to find it and tell you that they were saying Smith-Magenis syndrome, which I'm not aware of. 11-year-old.
Yeah, it's a chromosome deletion disorder, and if I'm not wrong, it's chromosome 17 deletion. But it's some of its symptoms. It's actually an interesting question, because a lot of times with our kids who are diagnosed with autism is diagnosed based on symptoms, right? And sometimes when you find out more, this again is one of those things where you have to know the biology of the child. When you find out more and you do genetic testing, you realize that there's underlying genetic deletions or issues with chromosomes. Now, because some of the things with chromosome 17 will result in similar issues, like you'll have challenging behaviors. With this particular disorder, you will also have some intellectual disability. And if I'm not wrong, I think you also have sleep issues. So you're going to have some similar types of issues going on. From a therapy and support perspective, behavior therapy is the way to go. And also, you should probably be also doing a lot of physical types of therapies like occupational therapy and physical therapy. And it is a little bit harder to deal with. My heart goes out to you. It's tough. It's very, very tough. You definitely need an intense system of support around you.
Wonderful. We have so many more questions, but we're out of time. I want to thank you, Dr. Grampiche, for being here and being so willing to answer people's questions. It's such a wonderful thing. I want to thank everybody that asked questions and everybody who just was here for listening. I want to point out that, again, if you have a question that's about school, our special education attorney that we have as a regular on the show is back tomorrow. Bonnie Yates will be with us. And then on Friday, we have Leah Hirschfeld's going to be with us talking about recent research in the field of autism. And Nancy Alsabad-Jackson will be joining with me, and we'll be talking about news stories that are of interest this week. So that's what's happening this week. Dr. Grampiche, thank you so much for being here. We're going to say goodbye for now, but give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching Autism Live. If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much. See you next time.